Originating from Deep Space Introduction. In hydrology, this is my first time writing an article, please take good care of it. Chapter 1. Cognition. You are listening at novelfull.audio. We usually think that cakes are sweet, the wind is cold, and the sky is blue. But the sweetness of the cake can be imitated by sweeteners. The wind makes people feel cold because it takes away the temperature of the human body surface, while the deep blue of the sky is reflected by the atmosphere, causing the final blue light to fall into our field of view. In fact, these are just the most common knowledge in life, but people seem to get used to it. The sky should be blue, the sun should be high in the sky, even so, humans should be at the top of this world. These can all be collectively referred to as cognition. However, the formation of cognition depends on the environment formed by the subject's thinking. Different environments shape different cognition. For example, animals are accustomed to seeking benefits and avoiding harm, but humans often like to take risks. Is there a true or false distinction in cognition? Hey, of course there is. Taking the cake, wind, and sky mentioned above as an example, what people see and feel is just like this. Over time, people have developed this understanding without understanding the underlying principles. So, if I deceived you and let you see the sun sinking in the sea, from your birth to your decline, throughout your life, would you, who has never seen the sun above the sky, think that the sun under the sea is the true sun? Even when someone tells you that the sun should be hanging in the sky, would you think that the other person is a madman? But oh, in the eyes of outsiders, the sun has always been hanging high above the top, and you, who question their serious truth and even have contrary perceptions, are probably the heretics that can be called crazy, right? Is what I said true? No, this is just a hypothesis. I am just a waiter, where is such a means? Do you think my words have value worth examining? Have I really seen the sun under the sea with my own eyes? Oh, sweetheart, do I look like I'm crazy? Look, your husband is here to pick you up. Hurry up, miss, I still have to work. Of course, my service is top-notch. A bit of humor is what makes me likable. Thank you for your tip. Wishing you both an unforgettable night. The 7 p.m. coffee shop is waiting for you to visit again. As the last guest snuggled into the bustling scene outside the shop window, the waiter closed the door and the lights dimmed. The coffee shop, which was out of place with this bustling commercial street, continued to close early as usual, but people have long been accustomed to it. With a creak, the old rear window trembled as the wind pushed it. The stray cat scraping through the trash can peek through the crack and saw that the shop was empty. It's clear that no one left here. The cat doesn't know, it is still focused on searching for its own food. Just as a group of soldiers wearing anti-terrorism tactical suits burst in through the back door, the poor kitten was also mercilessly caught in the net by them. Unfortunately, they were clearly late, and a dozen or so salespeople, including waiters, disappeared without a trace. Only the overly bright and comical clown's smiling face at the small blackboard at the door was left to welcome these unwelcome guests. Pick up the simple paper cuttings villain on the bar, and the middle-aged man leading the team thinks. It's you again, clown. The beautiful woman carrying the sparkling LV bag satisfactorily finished her last lipstick, put away the mirror in her hand, and turned into the deep alley with familiarity. She knew her opponent was following, but she didn't care. She can be a waiter, a barista, or even a store manager. As long as she is willing. They know there's a problem here, but it's impossible for them to grasp the root cause of the problem. As for these people who have deceived the search, they are just clones, as long as they have hands. For her, it's just a matter of cutting a few more paper figures with some effort. The other party came knocking, but who is the hunter? Create loopholes, leave a glimmer of vitality for the opponent, confuse their audience, and ultimately win without mercy. Great success. From the beginning, they were not on the same level, and her existence was not in the ordinary people's perception. As the goal of this mission, the sun at the bottom of the sea. Whether it's her or something else, it's an anomaly that is not recognized by ordinary people in this world. But now, the curtain used to shield the existence of aliens from ordinary people has gradually been lifted, and various organizations have no spare effort to improve such a situation. As an unscrupulous dentist said, sometimes, maintaining the status quo is much easier than destroying it. People either believe in science or religion, but have never witnessed the distortion and miracles beneath the curtain. Cognition is a burden, which is a truth that every contact deeply understands. Only those who have experienced it firsthand can feel the distortion of those indescribable things, but the situation outside that sky is deteriorating, and the occurrence of infiltration is more intense than before. Therefore, it seems that the decline rate of the previously maintained cognitive interference will also become very terrifying. For those in contact, peeking at any small singularity hidden under the guise of reality poses a fatal danger, and those involved are unlikely to return to normalcy. Perhaps living without knowing anything will make one happier. In this case, I really envy these soldiers. At least there won't be unscrupulous bosses deceiving workers to sacrifice their annual leave to see the existence of our level gods. Just throw that dwarf into the biochemical tank of the neighboring development team when you go back. Taking back the swirling thoughts, she walked to the agreed place. Yes, the red phone booth is really reluctant to update the system. Identity authentication completed, welcome to your arrival, executor. Smiling face person. The small anchor link has been uploaded to the matrix that covers the entire sky of New York, and the following is not a relaxed and enjoyable annual leave time. The anchor has been successfully connected, the dimensions have been unfolded, and we are about to enter the slightly distorted singularity. The Tower of London. Have a pleasant journey. Keep a record and send my sincere greetings to my dear boss, using vulgar language from Yen Guo. This journey should be as enjoyable as ever. Let's wait and see, the play belonging to the clown has already begun. And who is the audience and who is the actor is still unknown. Chapter 2. Peace is Blessing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dudu. The sound of the phone being busy rang for the fourth time, and the hand on the scarred dial had already pointed to 10 o'clock. F******. The man with a pure European face finally couldn't help but throw his phone hard on the simple engineering table in front of him, stirring up the already messy pile of things even more unsightly. The engineer from Yen Guo, who was opposite him, was on the ground comforting him. It's okay, Lao Pai. The progress of the development project has already been completed, and the rest is waiting for the personnel to enter the exploration. There's no need to ask your grandmother Jia for divination or anything else. As he spoke, he recorded the calculation results of the drawings on the table, looking eager. The roar of the excavator not far away gradually subsided, and a girl ran over with a shovel. I've taken care of Lao Pai, and I've already dug through the tomb passage. Here's a photo of the tomb door, take a look. As for your data, I'm ready to enter the tomb passage, so don't be fooled. Don't worry about my work, the engineer handed the organized drawings to the girl. Miss Miranda, my work is completed, and now it's up to you and Lao Pai. The girl rolled her eyes and twisted open a bottle of cola. I said a few times, call me Mingli, and I'm also half of an inflammatory Chinese. On the other side, Lao Pai took the photo and saw a bronze door painted with abstract patterns. He squinted at his watch and realized that he was making a living by taking people and money. The employer had set a time for him, and it was almost time for him to do so. With the help of the archaeologist Mingli, who had personally identified them, it was clear that they had found the right place. Hesitation was of no use, and he couldn't ruin his reputation. However, why does it always feel strange? Greet your subordinates to bring their equipment, and the next step is the delightful unboxing process. A mixed-race girl named Mingli and her group led Lao Pai into the hastily dug tomb passage. It seemed that this time it was just an ordinary black job entrusted by others to dig ancestral graves. After the incident was completed, she still took the money and left, but needed to be more careful about the investigation of the wine bags and rice bags of the American Park Management Bureau. Why can't the crazy woman Kagya find anyone? At the same time, in a gypsy divination room, Gaia, who was covered in wrinkles, hung down her thin arm. The exposed black-skinned woman loosened Jaya's neck and said, "I found it, boss. It's on the border of Arkansas next door, not far away. Our plane will be there in just one spot." The person in the dark couldn't see his appearance clearly, just nodded slightly, but the tattoo on his face was ferocious and didn't look like a dead object. This was all that Jaya saw in the end. Old Pai regretted that he shouldn't have entered the hole during the divination of the gypsy witch. Is this really just an Indian tomb left before the age of navigation? He only wants to inquire about the ancestors of the agent and the boss now. Everything here is too eerie. Walking through the chiseled mudstone, they did not encounter the previous mechanisms, but after the group of startled bats passed by, it seemed that this was no longer the corridor they had opened up. Under the soft mud, there were disgusting arthropods, and the stalactites on top of their heads were accumulated with long-lasting lime. Drops of molten liquid fell silently. The third time passing through the same fork in the road, someone in the team couldn't help but feel uneasy and asked Ming Li about the situation. Could it be ghosts hitting the wall? The people of Yen country have said that ghosts are confusing us. What are you afraid of? It's the age of science, believe in the gun in your hand, coward. The latter checked the route against the calculation chart, smiled perfunctorily, but frowned. The sound of breathing slows down, but the heartbeat becomes heavier. There is no problem with the data. She believes that the qualification certificate of the clip was not made by unscrupulous fake certificate merchants, but what if this is no longer the place just dug out? Wait, there are 11 people in Lao Pai's team, but why did I hear the breath of the 13th person? Ming Li suddenly turned around and caught a glimpse of a small figure in his spare time, appearing out of place among the group of mercenaries. But these burly men are unaware of this. Holding her breath, she touched the pistol at her waist. Lao Pai has been keeping an eye on Ming Li, who is the key to this mission. Because of this, he first noticed the other party's movements, and Lily winked at him. They were all old fogies licking blood at the point of the knife, and Pai realized the problem. When did this strange guy sneak in? Eagle, horned cow, you all dodge. The man shouted loudly, pulling out his gun to intimidate the other party, but his teammates did not unconditionally obey his orders as before, and the unknown woman spoke up. Ni Guya, Falama, the woman recited ancient language and smiled as she looked at Ming Li, her hunched body revealing an indescribable solemnity at this moment. But the two people next to her exploded without warning. Splashing flesh and blood spilled on everyone's body, then flowed, dripped, and accumulated water, full of filth. It seemed like the mercenaries who had just woken up were frantically tilting their bullets at her, but the woman didn't dodge and the bullets were crushed and dropped in front of her. She stepped forward, and those who approached were filled with anger, which turned into fear. The palm painted with a strange totem held the hand of the young mercenary, and the sound of gunfire stopped in front of her. She said, "Mia Kojiao." The young man agreed, "Mia Kojiao." Finally, Ming Li could hear her language and the extremely rare totem. She came to a conclusion, but even she felt unbelievable. The person who is approached turns around and fights fiercely against their companions, pulling the trigger recklessly. Lao Pai saved the nearby smoking gun, but a few people who were further away couldn't dodge and died under the gun of their trusted companions. Ming Li fired a few shots and knocked out the gun of the guy who suddenly turned water. "Guys, retreat." She shot at the woman and told Lao Pai about her discovery. "That woman is an Indian sacrifice." Lao Pai's first reaction was that she was joking. What era? Where is it? They came to dig people's ancestral graves, but they ended up sneaking into the team. Isn't it because they were afraid of getting lost and came to be their tour guide? Don't be joking. The person who just died is not an actor. First of all, I'm not joking. What she said was in the Indian dialect, with the sun and long feathered bird on her totem. I won't admit it. Ming Li smiled and gritted her teeth. I'm a PhD in history and linguistics, and I know her ancestors better than her. Cover me, get rid of that woman. Gritted his teeth, Lao Pai pulled open the bolt of his sniper rifle. Now is not the time to hesitate, it's time to make some money. That woman is too cunning. Even if he has extensive knowledge, he has never seen such a person, or maybe the other person is not human at all. But so what? Blocking people and getting rich, killing brothers, controlling your people and ghosts, now is the era of hot weapons. Get back to your graveyard. Close your eyes. Flashing bullets cover up, Old Pai no longer stings with bullets. The impact of a sniper rifle is not comparable to that of a small handgun, and the modified pure silver armor-piercing bullet still carries the opening mark he seeks. Now you can go embrace Jesus, amen. The shrapnel ejected from this side stirred up dust, and Ming Li took advantage of the woman's distraction to subdue the 2 and 5 young men, so as not to prevent Lao Pai from watching his brothers unable to take action. With a heavy punch, the young man fell to the ground and fell asleep. Did she hypnotize this guy? I'm a bit curious. However, the intuition is that this woman is not so easy to die yet, and the priest's ability to resist bullets is still working, but the effect is minimal. The powerful kinetic energy of the armor-piercing bullet clearly exceeds her upper limit of ability. The armor-piercing bullet shattered her wrist bone and tore apart her calf, but she did not show any pain. Allowing her body to collapse on the ground, she struggled to maintain her witchcraft. The mercenaries increased their firepower, vowing to let her also taste the taste of being shattered. In the next moment, a sudden change occurred, and the priest raised his head and roared loudly. The obscure language in his mouth, accompanied by a piercing melody, penetrated everyone's minds fiercely, making it difficult for the mercenaries to continue pouring their firepower. At the same time, there was a cyclone stirring around her, and the dust and sand rapidly spread. The whirlwind swept over the mercenaries standing in front, and in an instant, the barrel and arms were cut into thin pieces. Then it rolled the man in, like a tomato thrown into a blender, and before it could even howl, it saw a crimson hue. Ah! Ming Li seemed to hear such a sigh. She can understand the language of women, who are praising, crying, and singing the song of the return of the ancient extinct golden-winged bird that she believes in. Having no time to care about anything else, everyone could only stay as far away as possible from the terrifying wind centered around the Indian priest, pulling the unlucky ones and retreating. By chance, she noticed that the rocks here seemed to be piled up like a grand hall, topped with stone breasts and supported by pillars on the stone walls, with the priest standing on the central platform. No, this is the altar, and the words on it represent dedication to awakening, backed by the towering throne. This is no longer a tomb passage, and they have entered the center of the tomb chamber at some point, where the bronze door opens its arms and silently mocks them. This guy seems to be trying to bring them for a blood sacrifice. As he watched the ingredients enter the pot, he didn't expect the ingredients to bite back, did he? What's even more unexpected is that it's true that ghosts hit the wall, but doesn't this mean that the priests don't have enough energy to maintain the illusion? Take advantage of your illness to kill you. Ming Li felt that they needed some heavy firepower to cover up, and coincidentally, she had an extra hand grenade in her hand. Considering the cost of exploding the cave and being killed by the antique woman as a sacrifice, she chose the former. Taking advantage of the priest's dying weakness and seeing the clear barrier above with no wind, Ming Li threw with all his might. Let's go. A round object crossed the wind cut and hit the priest's foot, and then, boom, the gravel fell down from the stone wall, pouring a mouthful of old skin. Pooh! I told you not to bring explosives in. Do you really want us to die here with that woman? Old Pai was furious, but Ming Li didn't care. If it weren't for me, we would have died. That's right. But they also paid the price, causing 4 minor injuries and 3 deaths. Just because a priest who didn't know what it was, they lost nearly half of their hands and finally witnessed a strange power beyond imagination. The smoke dissipated, leaving only dirt on the ground. The animal's teeth, too old to be seen, were inserted upside down on the statue of a feathered snake that was not covered by illusions, glaring angrily at outsiders. The dazzling jewels on the ground are not stained by the blood of mortals, allowing the survivors to take a deep breath. The skills of the pre-colonial Indians in mining gold were still immature, but this did not diminish their value. How about we split up? Ming Li licked her lips. It seemed that she was tempted. 8 of you and 2 of us, find Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com and let's have a fair calculation. Lao Pai ignored her. The crazy girl didn't lack this money, and his professional ethics did not allow him to do so. The employer is looking for burial items, but the contract states that they will be personally allocated by the employer. Anyway, the last amount of money is enough for him to wash his hands and have no worries about food and clothing. He only wants to live a peaceful life, and money and other things are secondary. The most important thing is that the boss agrees to help him completely arrange the injured. Lao Pai plans to call and report later when he goes out behind them. The unconscious mercenary had already awakened, but an inexplicable radiance flowed in his eyes, just like the priest. A sudden burst of sunshine appeared in the tomb chamber, burning the wounded close to the door into charcoal in the blink of an eye. The torch ignited, reflecting the faces of those who had not yet died with excessive ferocity. It's endless. Ming Li murmured to herself, and no one paid attention to her. The golden figure in front of me suddenly changed, with twisted limbs and bony bones. This is simply a living person shaped by pouring gold on the surface of the body. Mortals, you have trespassed into my territory, killed my priests, stained the radiance of the gods, you are guilty. The awakened person quietly appeared on the throne, twisted his neck, clasping his fingers to embrace himself, twisting his body into an impossible way for humans to do. The sound of his bones breaking and hoarse declaration emitted a breath far stronger than that of the priests, decaying, but even more solemn, making people kneel and kowtow. Rick. Old Pai didn't understand. Why did the little kid he saw growing up become like this? There is also a group of old guys, everyone has almost died. Rick did not respond because he was no longer that human. He is an unnamed monarch who will judge the ants in front of him and then reign in the world. Chapter 3. Yi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The twisted human form carries ancient consciousness. He is the son of the Incans, the descendant of the extinct golden-winged bird. His golden eyes are still struggling, but his memory still lingers in that glorious era. The song and wine of the Incan primitive gods suddenly transformed into a dilapidated scene before him, causing him a huge gap. Glory is no longer there, glory is far away from him, gold is all over the ground, nothing more than dross. Even the priest who awakened him. The beautiful woman who always brought him joy and blessings in his memory. Disappeared from his sight, and these people killed his wife in front of him. Loneliness and despair swept through the soul, and the gods no longer protected them. Before falling asleep, she had already foreseen the outcome. She is still the one who has been waiting for thousands of years, even if we cannot see each other again. They deserve to die. The survivor named Capac thought so. So Gold responded to the monarch's call, and a damaged feathered snake stood tall, posing an attacking posture towards Ming Li. This hatred is really amazing. Ming Li picked up his Mauser gun, clanging and unharmed. With just a flick of his head, this golden creation flew away and landed on the rock wall from afar, unaware of whether it was alive or dead. The giant snake turned its gaze and stared coldly at the remaining mercenaries. Capac's twisted arms held onto the scepter beside the throne in a strange posture, and his resentful gaze scrutinized the disobedient. He wanted to kill them, but on second thought, what happened? Will one continue to drag this remaining body to live in an era that does not belong to them? No, he misses his hometown, his subjects, his power, his wife. The scepter swung, and the sand, wrapped in the remnants of the priest, respectfully presented it to him. He still has a chance to preserve his spirit and flesh, and connect blood and bones. He still has room to resurrect his beloved, with just a little assistance and the cooperation of people from this era. Then continue to expand based on them, accommodate more people, and make them his subjects. He believes that in this way, his kingdom will be reborn 1,000 years later. Having made up his mind, Capac spoke up, "Outsiders, you don't want to die either. I will give you a chance to submit to me, and I will promise to reward you with gold, power, and even divine power like mine." Mercenaries are all for profit, and the current situation cannot be chosen by them. Even if they kneel down to be dogs for others, as long as they can save their lives, their dignity is not worth mentioning. Anyway, they are just poor people who make money with their lives. Who are they selling their lives for? Lao Pai saw the movement in the eyes of his remaining companions, filled with bitterness. A mercenary team in the industry fell apart like this, and he, as the captain, had no choice. And that little girl, who is obviously the same age as her own daughter, this person, if you say no, then it's gone. The mercenaries surrendered to the kings and ministers of the old world. This is not surprising to Capac, as he is well versed in the instinct of human survival. The gods of the past had to beg for mercy in order to preserve themselves, let alone these tiny insects. The scepter is raised high, and he will bless mortals, taking the first step for him in this era of gods and gods falling 1,000 years later. Bang! The final plastic silver armor-piercing bullet pierced through the twisted center of the human eyebrow, which was Lao Pai prostrating in front of the seat for worship. If that's not the case, I really can't explain it to the old guys. The cunning hyena showed its fangs. Mercenaries can value their interests, but they must never forget their righteousness. The deaths of those companions should not be meaningless. Similarly, after wandering the world for so many years, Lao Pai knew very well how serious the consequences would be if he let this monster go out, and he didn't believe that they could end up with him. He deserves to die in his time. If he dies, don't come out and get involved in capitalism. Sigh. The head bent backwards to its limit slowly returned to its original position, and the bullet pierced through his skull. However, he was already one of the dead, and it is absurd to say that pure silver has a suppressive effect on ghosts. Capac, who enjoys the name of the sun, is tired of it. Let's switch to a new group, there will always be obedient people outside. The golden snake roared again, and an inconspicuous red dot fell between its kisses. The limp mercenaries heard the sound of the trigger, like a rocket launcher. Accompanied by a close-range explosion, Lao Pai was thrown out and cursed while spitting sand. "I knew you couldn't just die like this. You really want to kill us together." According to the law of no harm with smoke, our comrade Mingli miraculously survived, even though her appearance was truly disheveled. Rib fracture, left upper arm tear, golden hair on the head glued together by blood. So she pulled the trigger with her uncommon right hand, and this individual rocket only had one shot. Capac should be grateful, otherwise she should have aimed at his head. There's really no stock left this time, let's run, brothers. He threw down the empty tube and ran away. It can only be said that he is truly a talented archaeologist all year round, capable not only of doing black work, but also of shooting and running. The mercenaries scattered and fled, while Capac lost both the golden snake and his mobility, making it seem that his bent legs were unable to run. They have a glimmer of hope. But Cheng Zhu is clearly not very willing. Who said he only has this means? Even if it was almost a complete loss, he could still crush these ants. Holding the scepter high in his hand, a dazzling glow flickered, melting even the remains of the golden snake. It spreads and is driven by the anger of the monarch. As they were about to break out of the bronze door, the tomb owner seemed to still hold control over the tomb chamber, so the door closed. Only one lucky person ran fast enough to trade a boot for a chance to survive. Watching the tomb door close and limping over, Ming Li only wanted to curse his mother. Damn it, it's not worth risking his life just for a graduation thesis. Get out of here. The bald man bumped into the door and exerted force with his still-moving body. Drink. The strong wind blows on the face, indicating that death is imminent. The heavy metal is difficult to shake, and it is estimated that it cannot be opened by brute force. That's right, after all, the other party is a monster that has come back to life from the dead, and despair has climbed up in their hearts. Lily, Dad can't accompany you to grow up anymore. Lao Pai finally couldn't help but shed tears. There was a bright light in front of him, which made him close his eyes. Have you arrived in heaven? I didn't expect to be forgiven for doing so much dirty work. Watching the middle-aged man fall towards him, Sorilan dodged aside in disgust. He is not my dish. The tomb door was opened by someone from outside, and a few people fell in front of Sorilan unexpectedly, but fortunately survived. The burning and self-suppressing tomb rushed out and pounced directly on the face of the black-skinned lady. No matter who, they must die. Capac was extremely annoyed, every time he let them survive on the brink of life and death. This made him wonder if they were pretending to be powerless, just trying to pretend to be pigs and eat tigers, or if there were lucky recipients among them. Sorilan punched out, and the surging force of the punch pressed the flame to stop expanding, even flowing back. The sound of breaking through the air awakened the drowsy minds of the survivors due to lack of oxygen. Ming Li said, "Wow. Is this the rescue soldier you invited, Lao Pai? You're such a beautiful woman, I can't tell you're so good at it, Lao Pai." "Fuck you. I have a wife, wait, it's so big." Sorilan kicked the sleazy men aside, but gently helped them up. Shattered Lips were treated differently and happily looked down upon mercenaries, saying, "Learn more, only with a sweeter mouth can you be welcomed, beautiful sister." A minute ago, the mercenary who had escaped from the living sky covered his face and wept, while the clip that was watching outside welcomed an unwelcome guest. The cyclone of the helicopter caused the sunglasses on the clip to fly, and he wanted to slip away. Sorilan got off the plane, but Jiazi knew that the person in charge was still behind. The inflamed man with a black tattoo walked past him, watching as the man and woman walked into the shadow of the tunnel, and the clamp could only catch his breath. "I can't wait here anymore, guys, please seek your own blessings." This is the second time that the clamp has felt the terrifying pressure. Even though they are both human, it's not right. Those guys should be monsters. Jeep's tires raised dust, and the engineer ran away cursing, still thinking about his last installment, gradually drifting away. Returning to the unlucky group, Sorilan glanced at the tomb door and understood the limping mercenary's heart. The scattered magic element has exceeded the threshold of the normal realm, with an increase in distortion. Coupled with the tomb environment here, it is a clear, revival event. But their purpose of this trip is not to solve the pollution left by the last generation of gods. On the contrary, sending a special express delivery is what they should do, just that the recipient of the express delivery happens to be among the contacts. Helping Ming Li sit aside, the tattooed man approached with a smile and said, "Hello, may I ask if this is Miss E. Ming Li? There is your package waiting to be signed for." Ming Li thought that she didn't have the express delivery from Yenguo, but she still signed her name. The other party was their savior, although they looked strange. Mercenaries are a bit numb, isn't it good to do this in front of the main lord? The zombie, who was repeatedly slapped in the face, gave up maintaining his dignity, letting his cheeks tear and the pollution deep in his soul no longer suppress him. He smelled a dangerous smell on the newcomer. If the black foreign woman could barely survive under his full body, then now she was already a threat, not to mention the man. He could only see the other person, but could not feel their existence, which was not normal. The pitch-black feathered snake replaced the light, and the golden color was dim. Taimugo. Luyamakiri. The split tongue twisted and wriggled, quickly spitting out ancient bites. The last generation's pardon was issued, rushing towards the crowd. Looking at the package being signed for, the delivery guy with tattoos clearly didn't want his customers to be disturbed. "Soriland, make it quiet," he said. "Move forward, wave your arm, and take 8 steps to punch." Soriland's powerful blow shattered the shadow, followed by a short sprint, and his agile figure gradually magnified in the eyes of the living corpse. Roar! Capac, who took a breath, was going crazy. He had no spare energy to launch an attack technique. Why are these outsiders so strong? If it weren't for the incomplete awakening that caused his power to be completely depleted, how could he have stopped at this point by searching for the Shuyuan? www.zhaoshuyuan.com? Is he going to escape? They are the ones who should have escaped. The dim gold gathered into sharp spikes attached to his arms, and his twisted body completely collapsed. The trans joints and tentacles appeared in the human body at the same time, and the pupils split apart, contaminating and infecting him for too long. He had no way back. Looking at the deceased in front of her attempting to confront her with alienated flesh, Soriland felt sad. Those who have experienced the fall of the gods, carrying the pollution of their souls, wake up again, but this world is already different. It's really sad. The fist fell, and darkness covered the horizon. Capac suddenly woke up, panting heavily, and the priest beside him gently comforted him. "I seem to have a dream." "What did I dream of?" "I dreamed of you." "It's okay, sing me a song, just the one we first met." Okay, my king." "The distant wind brings us flowers. On Sunday, please listen to our prayers and let our souls return to our mother's embrace. We were born one, and we will never leave until death." After solving the other party, Soriland returned to the man's side, while Mingli fainted due to blood loss and collapsed on the man's body, still holding the strange package in her arms. And the mercenaries all fell to the ground. "The mission is over, boss. We should go now. The magic element fluctuation just now was too strong for me to intercept. It should be recognized by the satellite now. It is expected that the people from Lao Mi's laboratory will arrive in 30 minutes. I understand. The gift has been delivered, but Lao Yi owes me a favor now. Please help me remember." The propeller blades turned and the helicopter disappeared into the clouds. Yanguo Post is in a hurry both to and from. Quickly, people wearing protective clothing surrounded every corner of the tomb within a radius of 30 kilometers. Chapter 4. Awakening from a Big Dream. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Arkansas Today daily reports that a serious terrorist attack occurred at the state border last week, with the severity of the situation leading to the deaths of 8 American citizens. We express our deep sorrow for them. There is a melodious 80s love song, Deep Love Like the Sea, playing on the sports car. The bright and beautiful girl wearing a bandage is puzzled by her charm, as if she is allergic to romance while holding today's daily news. Hey, is this the United States? It's like terrorist attacks happen every day. The person who said this was Joel, a friend of Mingli. This wild and unrestrained young man received Mingli's news and came to the hospital to pick her up in a seductive Maybach. Of course, it cannot be ruled out that he still has a persistent desire to approach Mingli, even though the other party claims not to like men. "What if I could make you fall in love with me?" Mingli couldn't resist this stubborn donkey. To be honest, if it weren't for Sasha and the others still following the professor to exchange ideas abroad, she would definitely not have bothered Joel. This is also a challenge for herself. Until getting off the car, Mingli politely refused the rose of the French nobleman. "Joel, I'm allergic to roses." "Why do you seem to be allergic to every type of flower?" In the end, Mingli accepted the request to have dinner with him, but the date was set by her. "Take out your personal key and open the door with your intact right arm." Lying down slowly with her arms propped up, Mingli watched the yellowing maple leaves falling outside the window, reflecting on that time terrorist events. Strangely enough, the phone of the clip could no longer be answered, and the mercenaries forgot what exactly happened. They did not leave a clear impression of the abnormal event, only knowing that they must have experienced an extremely dangerous tomb exploration mission, with heavy casualties. For this, the client even spent twice the price to comfort them. Shouldn't that be the case? Have they all forgotten about the priest, the possessed spirit, and the pair of couriers who saved them? The entire incident was summarized as a common terrorist attack. It's really ridiculous. Those who have experienced it firsthand know that this could not have been a terrorist attack, but rather a criminal act of tomb excavation. But by the time they woke up, they had already been taken to the hospital, and the development site had been handled cleanly. The boss remained silent about this matter and took the money to settle it. Who cleaned up this mess for them? Who sent the package again? What is hidden behind this? Is a mysterious existence real? Or is this just my illusion? By the way, that courier. Ming Li packed all his belongings in the hospital into one bag. If this is true, then the courier must also be there. Unable to find it, she slumped down on the sofa, pulling her hair and trying to recall. In the next moment, her left hand in plaster touched a cardboard box. There is no information on the box, it is a safe and reliable product. Open the box, only full of buffer foam. Peel open the foam and find a clown mask and a letter at the bottom. Full of question marks, do I remember buying this thing? Is it a small commodity from a certain country in China? What kind of ghost? Leaving aside the grinning blue and white mask, Ming Li opened the letter again. The content of the letter surprised her, as someone's research project had reached a critical stage and they might not be able to fly to the United States to spend their birthday with her this year. They could only ask their friends to help hand over the letter to her. They sent her a birthday gift and lucky talisman together, and as compensation, they had already invested a lot of money in the card to let her have fun and have fun. The signature at the end of the letter is "My mother who loves you. Yi Ling." That guy Ming Li, who understood something, dialed a number. Yi Ling may have gone to work on the project, but her phone hasn't been connected yet. Ming Li understands Yi Ling, and she never lets her get involved in her work. She only knows that Yi Ling is a historian and explorer. Yi Ling always flies around the world on business trips, sending her all kinds of novel things and silly selfie postcards. They agreed to celebrate every birthday together, but now Yi Ling has broken her promise. This is very unusual. In the past, even if there were new overseas exchanges, Yi Ling would find excuses to come back, and the two people who helped her deliver the package couldn't be normal people, could they? Yi Ling once mentioned these two friends, she didn't believe they wouldn't know the details. So there is only one possibility, that Yi Ling herself has been fully exposed to these abnormal events, but kept her silent. This is really an unreliable adult. It's clearly their 18th birthday. With a sigh, I packed up my things. As for the mask, it felt cold and soft leather to the touch, suppressing her terrifying associations. Ming Li still put away the lucky charm close to her, although she had never seen anyone use a clown mask as a lucky charm. Ming Li decided to give her dear mother a chance. She should receive a reasonable explanation, even if it is somewhat unreasonable. Rather, she had a premonition that the world was not as real as it seemed. The sunken Atlantis, the silent ancient Maya, too many civilizations quietly cut off, leaving no trace of their true existence in all aspects, with only a small amount of evidence to prove their existence. As a historian, Ming Li keenly felt this irrationality and completely did not believe in any official, reasonable explanations. She always remembers a sentence that Yi Ling said. Sometimes, what we take for granted is just an illusion, and the truth is only in the hands of a few people. She read out the second half of the sentence. So history should be fully recorded, and people should bloom for us. After such a long exploration, Ming Li realized that she was getting closer to the truth. Her every archaeological excavation was not just about accumulating credits to get scholarships that were not as much as her pocket money. Open your laptop and access the privacy website. The black crown icon flashes. Spade A, welcome to Come. This is a website with an indefinite domain name, filled with various bizarre and chaotic content, as well as various heretical cultists. They are here preaching doctrines and praising unknown gods, like mindless worms. She felt genuinely bored, and if there were any images of her experience, these crazy people would probably know what they had done. Perhaps it is here that provides some effective information for Mingli, and even the tomb excavation order was received here. Unlike most visitors, Mingli has never been influenced by these comments. She seeks a scientific explanation, and the supernatural is also justifiable. It's ridiculous to pray for redemption from these strange things. It's better for the WHO to volunteer and plant various trees to save endangered species. As usual, ignoring the foolish behavior of ridiculous fools, she typed in the forum. Kingdom. Perhaps someone here may be interested in what she knows, so she can also take this opportunity to find what she wants to know. The kingdom, as its name suggests, is a forum with a strict internal hierarchical system, even more than just a forum. The intelligence network here is well connected, ranging from the whereabouts of a certain Southeast Asian royal chieftain to the search for specific objects. Everything is here. Mingli is level 3, which is not too high, but it is her current limit. Those who go up further have the right to enjoy exclusive services from the kingdom. You can use this power to meet people who are usually difficult to see, or use this power to eliminate some enemies. It's easy. Hang intelligence-related information on the homepage. Good transactions need to make themselves appear attractive enough. Of course, these pieces of information require some degree of modification. Some beginners simply pour out everything they should or should not say, only to ignite themselves. Soon, some of Mingli's bold customers froze and said, what new information is there? Old where are we going to dig up ancestral graves again? After casually teasing these idle troublemakers, I saw the person I was looking for in a crowd of bullet boxes. ID name. Octopus doesn't have small balls, initiates a transaction meeting with you. Click agree. The other party didn't say much, and directly asked Mingli to tell him the complete event based on a brief overview. The price offered was also very reasonable. 400,000 shillings plus 3,000 credit points. But who is Mingli? She doesn't care about these things, she only seeks the truth. And now she is talking to the only wise man in the kingdom. With him, you only need to pay enough to obtain the knowledge you want. In order to pay the price that can satisfy the other party, Mingli specifically took over the task of exploring the ancient tomb of Enon and clarified the survival status of the tomb owner. Yes, they said they wanted to figure out the life and death of the tomb owner. At first, I felt that the wise man was not very intelligent, but it wasn't until later that I understood its purpose. I don't need these, I demand the truth of the world, replied typing on the keyboard. The person on the other end was stunned, lost in thought in the dimly lit computer room. Ignorant people are truly fearless. I refuse this transaction as learning about it will not benefit you. Mingli changed his questioning method and said, so if we ask, is the world we see really like that? Yes or no, it's just that in terms of personal cognition, we are just living in the most normal part. Mingli understood clearly. Her original intention was only to figure out whether anyone knew about the abnormalities in this world. She had her own answer, and did not fully hope to know everything so easily. She gave her intelligence. The true name of the tomb owner is Capac, confirmed to be resurrected from death, and ultimately died. After Mingli finished recounting the specific information, the wise man finally cautioned, don't try to pry into invisible things. Some things cannot be easily known and there must be a reason for them. Cognition is a burden, and ignorance is never a bad thing. Cognition is a burden, but seeking knowledge is human instinct. As far as Mingli is concerned, pursuing knowledge is happiness. She has long fallen in love with the study of ancient historical relics to restore the mundane life of time, and also has the idea of following Yi Ling. This is the scholar. This matter has come to an end. For the next half-month, Mingli will focus on self-cultivation and writing papers. The cat will grow fur in her own home or be pulled out by friends to have a party. During this time, I accompanied Joel to a candlelit dinner to thank him. However, halfway through the meal, I found out that he had booked a private room and was ready to make love to Mingli. The person in charge fled with the bag. By the way, this is Joel's third confession. No, are all French men so passionate? But he has already set foot on 3 boats, is it still considered a long-term relationship? Miss E, who couldn't understand men, had great doubts. She threw her high heels into her bag, changed into sneakers, and came back to life. Looking up, a girl of the same age walked past her and suddenly seemed to have seen Luo Shen. The other party's cold temperament and irresistible appearance are really like a goddess in the mythology of the Flame Country. Even the knowledgeable Mingli has been captivated. In a daze, the black dress disappeared into the corner. She chased after her, but the girl had already disappeared without a trace. It's a pity, I should have asked for a contact information. Mingli regretted it, and now all she had left was a faint fragrance at the tip of her nose and a tear mole at the corner of her eye to reminisce about. The foolish girl who was talking about her beautiful little sister was left feeling disappointed after multiple unsuccessful social media announcements. After a few days of decadence, she was pulled by her friends to fly to Utah in the western part of the United States to have fun. She went to the bookstore www.zhaoshuyuan.com, claiming to help her celebrate her birthday together. Before setting off, Mingli cleaned her house thoroughly. Although she usually gathers less and leaves more, this is also her place to stay. Looking at the leather mask lucky talisman in his hand, Mingli still carried it honestly on his body. The plane glides over the horizon, with its tail trajectory entwined with clouds, and the entanglement of fate will not change for anyone. Sighing at the sunrise and sunset, it seems that the two characters are different. Changhong breaks the sun, how do you know that I miss each other for a moment? On the top of the Yengua mountain, someone sang a gentle song in the bamboo pavilion, indicating something. The other two were just playing games and ignored. The self-deprecating man swayed his water sleeves and played. One person got straight to the point and said, if you come here, it means the plan has officially started, player. Yi Lingguan said, yes, I don't have much time, and we don't have much time either. The chess game is half broken, where can the player play? This game is so sad and desolate. The game never stops, and the situation is unclear. Chess players should be cautious when playing. The old man advised. It's okay, I have my own decision. This chess game is too old and bad, and we should let them all start playing. But my child needs to trouble you a lot. I'm afraid I won't be able to accompany her on the road after this. The two of them stopped talking. The last son narrowly won. Yi Ling stood up and left. After pondering for a long time, the old man sighed and said, it's time to go down the mountain. Young people really don't understand the old man. From then on, the water in the tank finally stirred up, whether it was big fish or shrimp, they were all swept into a turbulent vortex. Only the protagonist Mingli was still sleeping soundly on the plain, unaware of what he was about to face. Just heard a long sigh. Chapter 5. Scarlet Nocturne. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The soil and water in Utah are very good, in the words of Yan Gua, it is warm and nurturing. The temperate marine climate is very evident here, and the southern part of the Rocky Mountains, where Mingli is located, is year-round in spring. The overgrown vegetation is rampant in swearing sovereignty here, nothing more than the local people slaughtering guests so fiercely. The characteristic of the daring family is simple folk customs. Mingli led a group of idiots who grew up in the big city, struggling several times to break free from a group of unscrupulous tour guides. It's not that she really cares about those few dollars, it's mainly because they, who are not familiar with life, still want to go to the Rocky Mountains to have sex, saying they want to experience the local customs. After being tricked by Mingli, who had come here to work earlier, he swore never to trust these locals again. Finally, I asked my local colleagues who I knew to work as guides to feel at ease. Now they have boarded the bus and set off for the booked hotel, with a pile of promotional materials stuffed before leaving. Thank you, Mike. If it weren't for your willingness to be our guide, I wouldn't have dared to come here for vacation. Mingli walked over to the driver and sat down. Mike, who also serves as the driver, smiled and said, "Don't be polite. I'm the one who collects the money. If you thank me, please treat me to an extra drink." By the way, I glanced at the flyer in Ming Li's hand, which was a circus promotion. This circus is quite popular, and many foreigners come specifically to see it. You can also try it out. Ming Li took note and chatted with him for a few more words before returning to the back seat. The scenery outside the window is beautiful, with lush leaves. Looking at it, Ming Li fell asleep. My friends are still laughing, and Mike is also chatting with them. No one noticed the gradually spreading crimson streaks on the edges of the leaves outside the window. On the edge of the cliff further away, the fancy performers rotated their binoculars to peek at this bus. "I smell delicious food coming towards us, good baby, we can have a big meal now. Praise my Lord. Oh. Don't bite me." The canine-like creatures around felt their owner's emotions and excitedly bit and tore at their owner's calf. If it didn't look like a person, I believe it would be very cute. The hotel is good, you can see the surrounding mountains. Time is approaching evening. 3 or 2 migratory birds roamed on the lake, and the dining carts of vendors on the newly opened square had already opened. Nightlife is about to begin, and friends here are still discussing whether to go to the nearby popular treehouse to play horror games tonight. Finally, I went to the campfire party in the square. The men and women in the square swayed according to the rhythm, and the ambiguous atmosphere combined with the stimulation of alcohol prompted people to make more desires. Watching Lisa and Luca, the old couple, caressing each other like no one else, Mingli remembered the girl who had met once again. So she poured another glass of draft beer hard. She doesn't dislike such happy gatherings, which has indeed eased her tense nerves since that incident. With a mask in her hand, Mingli suddenly had an impulse to wear it on her face. It should feel icy and cool. Hush. The bubbling ice beer glass pressed against the back of her neck, and Maggie folded her skirt and sat down. "Do you have any worries? I heard you have finally met the ideal type recently." "Yes, but unfortunately, it only happened once in a while." While chatting, suddenly a burst of screams erupted from the crowd surrounding the campfire. "What's going on?" "I don't know, go take a look." Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a circus clown performing. He spewed out a long fiery snake while holding a bottle of wine, and invited the audience to come forward and lock him into a cabinet made of a piece of cloth. The next moment, the cabinet caught fire. But amidst the screams, he walked out of the fire on the other side and waved to the audience. Finally, the clown scattered cards all over the sky, leaving behind a sentence. "Red-nosed circus awaits everyone," and scattered into a group of cats disappearing. People either catch cards or stroke cats. Everyone is marveling at the exquisite performance of the clown. Now the reputation of the Red-Nosed Circus has become even more prominent. Mingli stood in place, and a cat walked up to her with a card in its mouth. On the card was Heart A, but with a flash of fire, it turned into a ferocious crimson clown. Maggie glanced at the card and said, "What I got is tobacco K." "Hey, Miranda." Recalling the clown's inexplicable and annoying smile under the firelight just now, as well as the last look that guy gave at him, Ming Li's intuition was not good. She smelled a mysterious aura again here. That circus seems to have to go. The next day, the crowd stayed at the hotel and strolled around the nearby attractions. I just found out that the circus last night was located in the small town of Laotian at the foot of the mountain, not far away, only half an hour's drive away. But it only starts operating in the afternoon. When they arrived, the town residents were very enthusiastic. Although it deviates slightly from the central tourist area here, it seems that they can also attract many tourists with this circus. But they don't seem to be like other local vendors who slaughter customers, and their overly childish and honest buying and selling are out of place with the local characteristics. And Ming-Li found that they always laughed so sincerely, so happily, and so rigidly. After asking, their answer was happiness. They are very happy, so I hope the people who come here are just as happy as them. Indeed, although this place may not be as bustling as those first and second-tier cities, people at least don't have to worry about food and clothing with the tourism industry. This is far from enough. There seems to be no scheming, bullying or coercion here. Even the patrol officers greeted everyone with a smiling face. According to the Anglemer Happiness Index, the appearance here should not be so peaceful, people's needs have not been met, and happiness should not be so good. It's not time yet, and the boss saw Ming-Li alone with a worried expression, so he gave him a free drink. The ice cream was painted with a big clown's smiling face, which made me feel angry. Everyone here seems to be wearing a mask, which is chilling. Everything here is not quite normal, we need to tell the Maguires. With this thought in mind, Ming-Li stood up and walked towards his companions who were still playing in the open amusement park. In the next moment, she suddenly turned her head again and looked at the customer in the corner of the beverage shop. Just now she felt a prying gaze looking at her, completely undisguised. But the girl with big waves threw an eyebrow at her as she looked at her. It's not her, it was someone else just now. Who could it be? Seeing my companions express their observations of anomalies, I politely persuade them to leave. My friends also expressed some strangeness, but more often than not, they wanted to enjoy the performance, so these abnormalities can still be tolerated. The Lair brothers, who claim to be responsible for military force in the team, serve as armed police officers and believe that they can handle any unexpected situation. At that time, they all just thought that it was just a scam planned by the people of this town together, and they would make a killing after watching the performance. When they arrived at the entrance, the huge tent opened an entrance, and Ming-Li could only follow them inside. The interior decoration of the Red Nose Circus is surprisingly luxurious. Both the curtain and the central performance stage are exquisite works that can be seen to the naked eye, and even the audience seats appear quaint and exquisite in design. Seeing these, Ming-Li breathed a sigh of relief. At least it made the circus look more like a living corpse closer to humans than the one he saw. Ming-Li would rather be just slaughtered, she cannot always be so lucky to escape death. When they sat down, the group was surrounded by a crowd, but fortunately their seats were all gathered together and they could take care of each other. It's still the clown with a red nose, but he's not the protagonist. The comical clown propped up his arms and pushed the ball into the field with his hind legs. Like a dung beetle pushing a dung ball. But when the ball reached the center of the stage, it exploded with a bang, flying out several pigeons carrying ribbons and many colorful ribbons. As the ribbons fell, a magician-dressed person appeared here, bowing to the audience. Why didn't there be applause? My dear everyone, so the applause thundered. As if in response to the audience's enthusiasm and support, the magician swung his cloak and appeared in front of the audience more than 50 meters away, presenting the new little girl with a red-eyed rabbit taken out of her hat. Next is our carnival time. The magician's performance was very exciting, which made the animal trainers who came on later want to compete with him for popularity. But the bear under his command seemed a bit nervous, unable to step on the ball twice and fell a big somersault, causing people to burst into laughter. Acrobats and animal trainers were busy coaxing it, which was even more amusing. A group of monkeys ran out to save the scene, riding tigers and circling around the field. Look, this is just an ordinary circus. Look, that monkey's panties have fallen off, haha. Listening to people's laughter, Ming-Li couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth. I took out my phone and wanted to take a few photos as a souvenir. Focusing directly on the screen, I scanned the silly bear and my fingers froze. The magnified perspective can easily see the details of the object in focus, such as this bear. Now Ming Li can even count how many stars there are on the dress it is wearing. So I just saw the stitching on its body clearly, and saw its face clear and clear. That bear, no, that thing. It's clearly one person. A woman with bear skin sewn on her body. The chills swept through her body, and she didn't think that only this bear among these animals would be an exception. As expected, those monkeys and animals are all humans. And now they are sitting on the high platform watching people who have been transformed into animals perform acrobatics, cross fire circles, and even wag their tails to please the audience. Seriously, it's disgusting. A white dove landed on its shoulder, curiously scrutinizing her. Goo. Can you see us clearly? The pigeon's teeth were rubbing against each other, and it spat out something not very sharp. Ga 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 ga. She can see us clearly. Gu ga ga. The white dove flapped its wings and flew, its deformed arms twitching under its plain white feathers, dropping a few feathers. Ming Li reached out to catch the laughing stinky bird, but unfortunately, he was almost there, so he could only grab the tail feathers of that guy. My gaze shifted upwards and I saw the dome, with indescribable totems depicted under the crimson curtains. It is beyond our capacity to look directly at his representatives, and calling his name will inevitably lead to disaster. That's a laughing night party, a crimson nocturne, asterisk asterisk asterisk. Unprecedented knowledge flooded into the mind without authorization, and the capillaries in Ming Li's eyes gradually opened, bleeding, and even the corners of her mouth involuntarily expanded to both sides. She wants to praise that existence and praise his true name to the world. The coolness in her palm awakened a hint of intelligence, and Ming Li almost knelt down. She held on to the seat and lowered her head, panting heavily. In the field of vision, it was still a faint red, but fortunately it did not go blind. But the people around, their friends are still focused on watching the performance of those clumsy creatures. Am I dreaming? Why can you still laugh? The creatures on stage seem to have freed themselves from some constraints, their sutures torn apart and their naked muscle tissue exposed. Lions have 3 heads, and their trans joints are made by bonding human arms together, elephants. That is an extremely obese man swinging his spliced nose, the eagle with outstretched wings, dragging a long beautiful snake, flew up to the lamp network and engaged in unbridled mating, ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. People laughed and frolicked, watching as these things pounced on them and opened their mouths. Someone spent a lot of money buying a ticket to sit in the front row and enjoy, and now those who die naturally bear the brunt. The beast feasted on it, its blood mixed with minced meat splashing down on the heads of the people behind it. Those bald pigeons with shedding feathers have extraordinary power. They pulled the lucky audience in mid-air with a combined force of 3 or 5 and playfully tore them apart, causing their internal organs to soar everywhere. An eyeball landed at his feet, and the bloody and miserable situation left Ming Li stunned. He regained his composure and pulled up the collar of the people around him, trying to wake him up. No fruit. Everyone is laughing and applauding. Ming Li saw the truth, they could see it, and their eyes were filled with despair. Gritting her teeth, she swung her palm hard and threw it at her friends in the face. Fan people to the ground in all directions. Please. If it doesn't work, just give it a second. Dude, wake me up. Those monsters also noticed that only Ming Li was still awake in the whole room, and some of them rushed towards her, with people laughing and being torn apart along the way. But thanks to their position at the back, the monsters over there were tripped up, and this side of Ming Li finally pulled back the minds of their friends. At the cost of their swollen faces. I still want to wake up everyone else, but if I delay any longer, I won't be able to run away. Ming Li thought to herself, I have no obligation, and I don't have the ability to save so many people by searching for the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com. She was able to wake up her friends to the best of her ability. The flying naked pigeon pounced down with a sharp throat, picked up a popcorn bucket by Lair and picked it up, then threw it to the ground and stomped it into thin pieces. Young people's minds spin fast, and they quickly receive the current information about the human tragedy. Elena vomited out. Everyone is panting heavily or retching, hoping that what is in front of them is just a dream. But unfortunately, this is not a dream. Don't be so nostalgic, run. Mingli pulled up Elena and decisively led everyone towards the exit to escape, while those things became even more manic as they watched one food escape with 7 or 8 other foods. Ah! No, don't run away. You have to eat. Offer. To my lord. The roar that could not be emitted from the population vented anger, and the pace of escape became increasingly rapid. Pushing aside the indifferent people and giving everyone along the way an equal big mouth, there were lucky ones who regained consciousness and fled together. Stumbling and stumbling, they ran to the exit and saw a glimmer of vitality. The magician, who always stood in the center of the stage, leaned on his cane and watched with satisfaction as the prey was about to slip away. Why don't you worry about the fat in your mouth running away? The clown bored and stung his feet, smelling it so bad. Let them run, anyway, the festival has already begun, and my dear believers will catch them for me. The animal trainer began to clear the scene, and the acrobat took the blind fortune teller to prepare for the upcoming ceremony. Praising spring, you protect us with love and joy as we struggle in this world. We will open this crimson night banquet for you, playing our lullaby. Chapter 6. Escape. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Opening the corner of the curtain, the flames caught the eye. It's dark now, so it's easy to know it's a torch. So why are these guys holding fire guards outside this circus? Is it difficult for them to know the inside story and come specifically to support? Or are they here for a party? The old man who was later awakened and escaped together rushed over and hugged the man in charge, looking excited. His wife is still inside, and he wants the other party to bring someone in and rescue her. The open mouth only shed blood. The old man looked blankly at the beverage shop employee who had previously praised his good relationship with his wife, and his abdomen was pierced by a knife. As he watched the old man fall to the ground, Mingli exploded and punched the perpetrator down. The person fell backwards, perhaps not expecting the prey to dare to resist, but this punch successfully triggered a brief chaos. In the chaos, Mingli broke out of the encirclement of these townspeople with his companions. Actually, when I saw these guys gathered outside, I felt a bit off, but I still couldn't stop the old man in time. A few people with perfect understanding followed Mingli into the alley. No one would be foolish enough to ask, what's wrong with this? No one would foolishly think it's a misunderstanding. When they escaped, they were all attacked by the townspeople, and to some extent, they were all injured, fortunately not to the point of injury. And if they didn't escape just now, they would definitely die in the hands of those people like that old man. Human beings have the instinct to survive, but now they know nothing about this complex and confusing situation. They can only trust their friends around them. Fortunately, everyone in the same industry is fine, and their phones are still with them. The best solution to such a situation is naturally to call the police, even if their actions are like shit. But the worst thing happened, there was no signal. Everyone's faces looked very ugly, but Mingli understood the most clearly that this was the same situation as last time. However, last time they all thought that the communication signal was missing due to the influence of geomagnetism and tunnels, so they didn't take it seriously. But now we have another available information. Since seeking help is impossible, we can only save ourselves. Maggie bandaged the bleeding fist for Mingli, but fortunately did not harm the bone. It's easy to move on. The Lair brothers have already brought in many agricultural tools as self-defense weapons. Mingli shook his hand, picked up a blunt hammer, and then picked up a pitchfork. Her melee ability is only slightly inferior to that of Lair's boss, and the second boss has to fight hard to completely suppress her. So the three of them will be everyone's shields and spears. The rest of us also divided the points to ensure that everyone has the strength to fight. In addition to their knowledgeable friends, there was also a couple, a child, and a seemingly robust man who followed them as survivors. After counting, there were only 11 people, and after speculation, they believed that the vast majority or even all of the outsiders had gathered in the circus. Many people woke up midway, but most of them also got separated during the breakout. It's hard not to believe that the people in this town, from being heavily promoted to being a circus-related element throughout the entire town, are colluding. And the scenes within the circus that make people feel hopeless and crazy are beyond everyone's understanding. Elena and Lisa tied their hair, hiding useless beauty. At such times, they didn't have much to do, but they never wanted to hold everyone back. Luca had already thoroughly studied the map and marked their current location to everyone before continuing his actions. And Mingli and they all know that this is Luca's habit, and whenever he goes to unfamiliar places, he will leave a good way out for everyone. The cooperation and tacit understanding of the 7 individuals are the result of long-term trust, but the next step is to consider these survivors. Do you want to act with us? Mingli negotiated with them. Even discerning people should know that we can only act together now. Who knows what exactly happened in this town? The encirclement of the townspeople and the pursuit of those monsters are all their concerns, as a weak individual will bring death. But unfortunately, that couple doesn't have much brain. The girl was coquettish, huddled in her boyfriend's arms and whispered softly, but her eyes were fixed on the injured group. You can tell at a glance that what she said is not good. I guess I just saw Mingli in their counterattack, thinking they were all bad thugs. For this kind of person, Mingli has seen them many times, and she is worried that this brainless blue pond will drag them down. So the boy said goodbye to the group and said he wanted to go back to the hotel to pick up the car. Mingli didn't say much and only asked Luca to point the way to them. The man was still coaxing the child on the side, and the little boy was also scared. He had just been carried out by a group of people, but his parents couldn't be awakened, so it was mostly more ominous than good. Added combat power, the man claimed to be a fitness coach and had rich combat skills. His joining and collaboration also increased everyone's chances of survival. The boy is very obedient, but he doesn't look very strong. Lisa and Elena discussed taking turns carrying the boy on their backs so they wouldn't be slowed down. Their hotel is not far away, but they have no intention of going back. According to the map instructions, walking in the opposite direction to the hotel is necessary to stay away from densely populated areas and reduce the likelihood of encountering enemies. We're off. Looking up, the night sky was tinted with a faint red, and the moon was low and slanting. If there were members involved in the field of astronomy in their team at this time, they would know that in this deep sky, all the stars were dead. Mingli lifted his feet and walked towards the unknown fate. Hidden in the darkness, surrounded by townspeople holding torches. The flame, which originally symbolized hope, is now synonymous with death. We can't be detected now. We need to walk over gently and run outside the town, and we'll be safe. Lisa whispered to Martin, and the little boy nodded forcefully. There is an open space in the block ahead, exposed to the flames. And there are really no obstacles that can block the view. Rush over. I'll cover for you. Lele picked up the broken wooden door on the side and prepared to charge. Mingli stopped him and said, "Wait a little longer." In the next moment, a few skinned monkey-like things fell from the sky, looked around, and then shouted wildly before leaving again. Everyone broke out in cold sweat, but if they were to rush out recklessly, there would definitely be no bones left. All right now, I thought these monsters wouldn't leave the circus, and now the situation I have to face is even more serious. After finally arriving at the next old living area, they also saw other people who managed to escape the circus on the way. Unfortunately, they were not lucky enough to encounter the monsters patrolling the territory. Under the numb gaze of the town residents, they were devoured by various animals. Elena covered Martin's eyes, it was a scene that would definitely become a shadow of his life. Until the last animal, whose prototype was not visible, left with a bloody spine, they continued to move forward. At this point, there is still 1 kilometer away from the destination, and it takes an average of 4 minutes for a normal person to run. For safety reasons, they still touched it bit by bit. In the decaying stable, there is a cocoon full of evil patterns, filled with slowly wriggling flesh and blood. Sensing the approach of a stranger, the thing became noticeably active. The blood streaks on the surface extended and attached themselves to the ground, silently attacking several people. Maggie, who had a keen sense of smell, smelled a hint of fishy sweetness mixed with the decay of the surroundings. Perhaps other victims she didn't want to add any more burden to the already overwhelmed nerves of her companions, so she prayed for a lucky visit. But if luck favors them, how could they be put in such a dangerous situation? The fitness coach at the end of the team is named Icky, who lived for 33 years and is an Orthodox Sowa believer. He never questioned the existence of the Lord, and this experience further strengthened his belief in the authority of Jesus. At this moment, he was still preaching incessantly to the second son of the Lair family. These monsters are meant to eradicate impure beings who go against the will of the Lord. However, the other party is an atheist and completely indifferent to this, and they reverse the physical exorcism. As he spoke, Icky suddenly felt a slight numbness in his calves. Ah! Lai heard a groan and looked back impatiently to check the situation. But the next scene will severely shatter Lai's atheistic views. Icky hung his head and his limbs trembled unnaturally. After a while, he raised his head again and his veins erupted all over his body. Then comes the moment of witnessing miracles. Lai saw the originally living person unfold in front of him, with the skin and flesh below his head opening up from the middle, opening his inner self to the person in front of him. Praise my Lord! Icky's head was still conscious as tears streamed down his face as he prayed. It hurts so much, it hurts so much. Help me. Who will save me? The person in front only turned around when they heard a strange noise, and when they saw this scene at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, they all stayed in place. In a daze, Icky felt someone caressing his hair and saw that the other person was Maria from the dazzling mural. She gently embraced herself and said, "Child, this is the Lord's blessing on you. He has ordered you to eliminate the rebels in front of you." Icky smiled and saw a monster with eyeballs and tentacles in front of him, while he was an armored knight with wings. What are they still saying to themselves? What is it? It doesn't matter, I will offer you to God. For the sake of my Lord, be grateful to my Lord. The edge of the skin and flesh that stretched to the limit popped out of the bones, covering the nearest Lai. When Lida and Mingli turned around, they happened to see the last moment when Lai was devoured by the alienated Icky. His eyes were filled with despair. After all, the extension is limited, so it can only bite into the thigh position of this adult man. Muscles and blood vessels are torn apart from the fabric, spraying blood 3 feet high. He didn't even have time to scream, so he was hastily chewed into his stomach, crushed to ashes, and his true remains were nowhere to be found. Ah! Lisa couldn't stand it anymore, pulling her hair and screaming. At this point, she tightly covered her mouth and dared not make too much noise. My close relative died tragically in front of me. Lida's eyes were about to crack, and he couldn't care about anything else anymore. He waved his grass fork and fiercely inserted it, as if he had been overwhelmed by hatred. Give him back. Monster. Go die, ah ah ah. The iron-like man roared forward. Mingli didn't care much anymore, his eyes bloodshot, and he used his blunt hammer to smash towards Icky's face. Chapter 7. Death Embraces Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The slightly rusted grass fork effortlessly pierced through the humanoid Icky. The hammer that followed closely opened a ladle for it. Blooming profusely, followed by a loud roar. Ah ah ah. The ugly monster swung the two apart, wriggling its abdomen as if chewing. Not enough, more is needed. We need to offer more blood to the Lord. The Lord is about to be born here, and these people are necessary sacrifices. Whispering the name of the Lord, I believe in, Allah, Holy Lord of the West Wind, the God of Spring, I offer you blood and flesh, and earnestly request that you grant me the right to enter the paradise, so that I may serve you forever. It muttered to itself and pushed towards the fallen prey, but it was still hungry. It's not enough to eat alone. Mingli, who was knocked to the ground by the strange force, understood what this guy was saying and caught a glimpse of a dancing tentacle behind it while trying to think. That thing was firmly stuck on Icky's neck, constantly swallowing crimson liquid and slowly releasing a faint red mist. Considering the sudden occurrence of this incident, this guy should be the culprit. Everyone, hurry up and help me entangle it. Mingli shouted loudly. Either you die or I live. Everyone was already filled with grief and anger, and now they had the courage to pick up the guy and hold on to its limbs, restricting its movement. However, while Icky has a strong and terrifying physique, his mobility appears extremely low, making it difficult to defend against the following actions. Picking up the fallen grass fork, Mingli dodged the sharp claws rushing towards her under Lida's block, accurately penetrating her swollen flesh beard. As expected, Icky showed great pain. The deformed body, which was over 2 meters tall, was now stumbling and retreating, with all its tissues spraying out like an epileptic seizure. And the inexplicable tentacles seemed to be electrocuted, quickly retracting and disappearing into the distance of view. The cocoon in the body suddenly erupted, and the blood on the surface opened and closed, illuminating a dark light. One eye opened and looked towards the location of Mingli. Mingli suddenly felt like her chest was being squeezed by a heavy stone, and she couldn't breathe. At this moment, she even had severe tinnitus. In the next moment, where no one saw it, the surface of the Lucky Charm also slightly fluoresced, and the corner of the clown's mouth lifted upwards, causing it to smile. However, the hidden flesh cocoon couldn't laugh anymore. It was already immature and unexpectedly encountered hard stubble. The mask cut off the pressure from the cocoon, causing Meili to relax all over, so that she could regain her breath. I'm not sure, so let's just consider it as a side effect left by the tentacles. Next, it will fulfill its duty as a lucky talisman. The mask pulled down at the corners of its mouth, as if it was about to cry. The one-eyed tremor of the cocoon, it was squeezed into a paste by the pressure out of nowhere, just like its means of dealing with Mingli. I can't die anymore. The Joker mask was satisfied, and in order to take care of its owner, it also thoughtfully created a small barrier for them to block the transmission of sound. It's a pity that it can't speak, otherwise, Mingli will be able to use its ability better, and it won't have to hide. Of course, this is the later part. The battle between the two foreign objects here has just ended, and Mingli over there is ready to end the battle. Seeing the killer of his own brother open his door, Lida immediately picked up a blunt hammer and heavily attacked his temple, which was already covered by thin muscles. A single blow from an adult man is enough to chisel open the granite, let alone a professionally trained armed police officer, whose soft flesh is no exception. The most vulnerable part was attacked like this, and suddenly, Icky's vision spun around, completely collapsing. But its vitality is too tenacious, even if it has a bleeding mouth and nose, it still struggles to get up. Icky's consciousness returned from chaos, and he only felt a splitting headache. Hiss. What's wrong with this? The head hurts so much. Did we get attacked? Mingli was walking towards it with a short sickle in hand, and couldn't help but pause upon hearing this. Are you Icky? She couldn't believe it. This thing was confusing her, right? Do you think you can't beat them, so you want to deceive them? Yeah. Did we escape, Miss Mingli? Where's Mr. Lair? Why didn't I see him? Looking at Icky struggling to climb up in front of him, Mingli kicked it down again. Are you not clear about the situation, bastard? Look at yourself. Ming Li raised a short sickle at it expressionlessly. On the less polished surface of the sickle, Ikki finally saw his own appearance clearly, so ferocious and so evil. No, 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 what's wrong? Why have I become like this? You monster, shut up. My brother. He was eaten by you. Ming Li stopped Lai De, who was rushing towards him with a weapon in hand. Although Ikki appears sober now, it's better to keep a distance. Be good to them all. I ate it, are you joking? Ikki couldn't believe it, but the inexplicable sense of fullness in his belly slightly overcame the lingering hunger in his forebrain. I didn't eat anything, how could it be? Ikki retreated helplessly and encountered a strange object on the ground. Finally, he saw clearly that there were two calves, and the marks of tearing on the cross-section were clearly visible. He recognized the jeans, which belonged to Lai Er, the young man who was quite in his eye. Didn't he just joke with him? How could, ugh. He vomited, of course, the alienated structure made it impossible for him to spit out what he had eaten. If Ming Li and they want to collect the body for Lai Er, they can only cut open its abdominal cavity, which has been transformed into a feeding organ. No, I can't think about it anymore. It hurts so much, I'm so hungry. Ikki hugged his head and twitched uncontrollably, while Ming Li clenched the sickle in his hand again and stepped forward. Ikki looked up, his eyes had already turned into a complex group of eyes. Eyes big and small stared at Ming Li, and surprisingly, a little bit of water flowed from it, eventually condensing into tears and rolling down. I'm sorry, I really don't know anything. This is indeed not his fault, he is also a victim, and it is better to live than to die. The physical and mental pain has already caused this pure Jesus and Chinese believer to collapse. It is ironic that the deity of faith did not grant him any miracles. No, it only seeks death, and there is only one death. Please help me, kill me, it said. This is its last desire, to preserve human dignity. Watching the faint starlight fall, Ming Li understood that it was time to give him a dignified exit. Do you want to bring anything to your family? Ming Li asked. Just tell them, I love them, but unfortunately. Enough. Ikki closed his eyes. Even though he still maintains his rationality at this moment, he is still a time bomb, and no one knows if he can always remain sober. Moreover, he can no longer appear in front of people. Lai De took the sickle, his hands rising and falling, blood stained his hands, and he completed his revenge for his younger brother. But he knew that this was not the other person's intention either. He needed to vent, Ikki needed liberation, and they all got what they wanted. The bodies of the two were hastily buried, and they couldn't turn back. When death strikes the most familiar companions around them, they truly realize the supreme authority and fear that comes from death. This is something they will never know in the laboratory or in books. When the clown followed the information that came from the cocoon at the end, only 2 crosses were left standing in front of the grave. Interesting, resolved the battle so quickly. And is this micro-barrier residue a high-level relic? Interesting, interesting. The clown casually cut open the throat of the skinless woman who wanted to dig open the grave to eat, and stretched lazily. Every day is nothing but some trivial matters. I have to find the sacrificial offering at the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com, which I can easily grab. I have to slowly rush to the altar. I really know how to manipulate people. The blood moon on the horizon is curved, and the false stars are smiling. Why are you shedding tears? Because I am afraid of death. Maggie clenched Ming Li's hand. They were less than 400 meters away from the exit. Just go through that garden again, that garden. Why are there so many people around? Welcome to the final stage of this sightseeing and performance. I have specifically turned the east and west directions upside down. Come here, we'll be waiting for you. The magician raised his hat gentlemanly and stood at the highest point of the altar, overlooking them. Ming Li and everyone stopped in their tracks. Unbelievable, they were clearly following the map in the opposite direction, but now they have appeared in an impossible place. Luca's map cannot be misread, there is only one possibility, that is, this guy has changed the direction of the entire town. But how could this be possible? Nothing is impossible, they don't know that the starry sky above them is false, and even their understanding of the directional space of this small town has been deceived. I just turned all the exits towards me, no matter how you walk, you can only reach here. This is impossible in space, but isn't magician best at turning impossible into possible? He has many means. As a magician, he will never reveal the secrets of his magic to the audience. Looking at the evil beasts perched on the altar, as well as the fanatical townspeople surrounded by water. The chills once again climbed onto Mingli's heart. Death may come at any time. Everyone is equal, no one has an exception. Chapter 8. Startled Transformation. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Bang! The gunshot suddenly rang out, breaking the tranquility before the storm. The pretentious magician stiffened instantly, with angry blood blooming on his forehead. Ming Li's expression was stern. Did he come to rescue them? The rest of the people were rejuvenated, their lifeless faces rejuvenated. But as they watched the supreme envoy be attacked, these townspeople remained indifferent. I just stared blankly, as if I hadn't seen all of this happening. After a while, this group of numb humans finally changed, their mouths curved upwards and they burst into extremely excited laughter. Aha! Ha ha ha! The horror of the scene made Mingli couldn't help but feel palpitations, and she didn't think the magician would die so easily. Sure enough, the figure on the high platform maintained a backward posture and slowly and forcefully supported itself. Twisting his stiff neck from side to side, the magician's severe wound between his forehead was rapidly recovering, even though it looked like a shattered watermelon. However, Mingli noticed that an inconspicuous townsman on the outskirts suddenly had his head shattered and could no longer laugh. Is it exchanging the lives of the townspeople for one's own? How was it completed? Mingli can only think of the divine means, the Lord of Spring. Stop. She slapped herself hard and interrupted the conversation in time. She didn't want to experience the feeling of being on the brink of death again. The shooter saw that he couldn't make a move and decisively fired several shots, and the dull sniper sound temporarily overshadowed the crazy laughter. Unfortunately, magicians never lose out on the same move. With a flick of their top hat, they block the high-speed bullets in front of them and are unable to advance inch by inch. Mingli's cognition has been refreshed once again. If the power of the Lothar spear used in the last tomb exploration was not enough to break through the defense of the Indian priests, it is understandable. The magician who can unload bullets with a speed of over 1,000 meters per second is not something in our understanding. On the windmill roof in front of the altar not far away, the C6, dressed in black combat uniform, gave up the overheated specialized sniper rifle and narrowly avoided the sneak attack of the skinning monkey before hiding again. The clown exclaimed in admiration for the keen sense of smell of the American specialized troops, while the trainer whipped his adorable pets to warmly welcome visitors. Lai Duo hopes he also has a gun in his hand, so maybe Lai Air won't die. I don't have to face a bunch of civilians like this, but I can only passively defend myself. And now the townspeople in front of them are also under the command of the magician, controlling them and pushing them to the altar. C6 felt anxious as he watched these cult members of evil gods about to meet their divine blood sacrifice conditions. He didn't expect the situation here to be so much beyond his expectations. Originally, this type of third-rate foreign object outside the domain required a group of C personnel to observe. However, due to the shortage of manpower recently, the captain took him out and praised him, saying, "The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility." The current situation is definitely not something that a small task force member can handle. Step on the woman's cervical vertebrae with 1 foot and kill the human snake whose surface is wrapped in mucous membrane. Its abdomen was filled with fetuses wriggling outward, which were also ignited and burned clean by the man. C6 discovered that the distortion level of this guy had reached the standard of depth 1, and the town of Laocoon had become an incubator. We can only hold on until the plea for help arrives before the closure of this coverage area. Mingli was being pushed and pushed by a group of people, and she resisted with all her might, smashing several people with nosebleeds on her forehead. She wanted to protect those around her. However, the indifferent people responded to the sacrifice's rebellion with their fists and tramples, laughing wildly. A shower of punches fell on Mingli's body. She propped herself up on the ground, unwilling to kneel. Lida punched a man with a knife, but the next second his fist stopped in front of a mother holding a baby. The blade pierced through Lida's chest. There was no baby in front of me, it was clearly a hunched pug. He looked at Lida with a mocking gaze, as if mocking everything about him. It's all a joke. Mingli, please. Lida fell into the crowd laughing wildly, while Mingli could only watch helplessly. She couldn't do it, she couldn't save Lida. It's useless to hope for someone unfamiliar, but at this moment, Mingli is extremely hopeful that C6 can turn the tide. Mingli went crazy and kicked away the villagers who were oppressing her, rushing towards the people surrounding Lida who were abusing her. But it was stopped again by people. Watching, Lida fell into a pool of blood. Watching, Elena's hair was torn apart. Watching, Luca hugged Lisa and dragged her into the fire. She was pinned down to the ground with her hair pulled out and could only watch. The clown stood with his head propped up and watched for a while, but he didn't notice that the artifact had been activated again. It made him suspect that its owner was not even here. However, thinking that today was the final decision, no one could escape from this place, so he settled his mind. Staring coldly as these selected sacrificial animals were slaughtered one by one was still resisting in vain, while the remaining two were exceptionally well behaved, looking as if they were being slaughtered. Upon closer inspection, one can see the imperceptible determination in the eyes of the woman holding the child. The clown grinned and saw that there should be a good play coming on later. The skinny old man, blindfolded, walked through the crowd and placed a bouquet of flowers for each deceased person. The roots of fresh flowers pierce into flesh and blood, growing freely and enchantingly, and the flowers are crimson and dripping. They have completely squeezed out life. The fortune teller came to Mingli and his chicken paw-like hand made Mingli feel sore. The azure in Mingli's eyes lost its radiance. She looked up at the old fortune teller who looked like a tree trunk and spat at her. The tree trunk wiped away the saliva, and she felt delighted to see the offerings to the gods so vibrant. The high sacrificial knife flickered with a cold light and fell straight down towards the sun. Is that all for now? It seems that even a lucky talisman cannot protect me. It was me who broke the promise, Yi Ling. Mingli closed his eyes with self-deprecation and waited. She waited for a hug. Miranda, how could you sit and wait for death like this? It's not like you. It was Maggie who saved her from the blow. Mingli hugged her fallen body in terror and touched the blade on her back. The fortune teller had a gloomy face, and the narrow scar on her neck was slowly closing. She has always been hiding behind Mingli, always like this. Now that her hero has fallen, it's time for her to stand in front of him. Watching Maggie, whose face was already colorless and still smiling, like a fool, like herself. Feeling the rapid loss of blood in her body, Maggie forcefully pressed her forehead against her cheeks. She wanted to say a lot, but she had no strength left. So she gave Mingli a final warning. We should continue to live our share. Oh. The child named Martin picked up the glass piece that had fallen from Maggie's hand and stood guard in front of Mingli, even though he was trembling. People are getting closer, with many hands pushing and squeezing them. Martin held up the glass and scratched around, preventing them from approaching. The cut skin shed blood, and they didn't care, as if there was no pain, only laughter, only endless demands. The townspeople began to bloom like Ikki, with bizarre silhouettes dancing wildly. The fortune teller followed them towards Mingli, and she wanted to retrieve the sacrificial knife to complete the final step. The gunfire on the other side gradually subsided, and C6 was about to run out of bullets, but he couldn't get close to the altar. On the contrary, he is already at the end of a strong crossbow. The tamer whipped the monsters and constantly consumed C6 of their stamina, as their raw materials were everywhere. He won't feel regretful. It's just that a few acrobats died, which gave him a headache. It's difficult to train a substitute. Mingli no longer cared about everything outside. She felt as if Maggie's blood had been absorbed by the knife, and the friend in her arms was light and floating. It's been said there's no need to lose weight, you're already pretty. Tears fell on Margie's little freckles, but she won't laugh anymore. She is still too weak. She has never longed so much for power, a power that surpasses mortals, even surpasses and suppresses these monsters. Something responded to her, do you really want to kill them? Then make a deal with me. Being bewitched, Mingli took out a clown mask. Can you really help me? I'm not curious why the mask can speak, but all that burned in Mingli's mind was madness. I never lie, how can a mask have bad intentions? But the cost is a bit high. Your life. Do you still want to continue trading? That's it. Kill them. Anyway, I was supposed to die. The corners of the mask's mouth rolled up to its ears, making it very happy. The contract was established, Mingli covered his face with a mask, the invisible shackles shattered, and a new oath was fulfilled. A large amount of knowledge and skills flooded into Mingli's mind, different from the distortion and strangeness of the last time. These unnamed knowledge made Mingli feel familiar and familiar. Make good use of these things, don't think you're invincible. You're still in your original body. After listening to the joking, product introduction of the mask, Mingli moved her muscles and bones, and her strength filled her body. She can now do what she wants to do. She has now gained the power and influence from the mask infusion, truly stepping into the inner world. At the moment of seeing the mask, the Joker furrowed his smile and screamed at the diviner who was still approaching, leave her, that thing is a relic from the upper level. Laughter masked the warning. Fortunately, the crystal ball in the diviner's hand lit up, warning the owner of the crisis. Mingli is one step faster. She pulled out the sacrificial knife from Maggie's body and a few flashed closer to the damn old witch. With a casual wave, a seductive light flowed from the withered wood, and the sacrificial knife painfully kissed its owner. The cracks on the diviner's crystal ball exploded. How could someone like her not have the means to save her life? Under the blindfold, 2 one-eyed bats flew out, their sharp calls exploding. Shocked the surrounding townspeople to the point where their ears were bleeding. Shoo, don't talk, be quiet, don't wake up my friend. The ink on Mingli's face melted and rolled off, continuously flowing. She is crying and sending condolences to her friends. Faced with unfavorable circumstances, the Joker joined the battle. At this moment, the Joker naively thought that they could kill Mingli and welcome the arrival of ******. You should cry, for the sake of your poor congregation. A snap of a finger, ink wriggling into shape, it was called drawing virtual and real. After coalescing, the 2 avatars appear distinctly detached, but the difference is that they have mottled colors and a texture reminiscent of an old oil painting. Let's play a game. I'll draw, you guess. Okay. Unable to refuse, the clone jumped up a few meters to catch the bat. The viscous oil paint blends with them, which is not enough. The clone, Mingli, showcases his painting to the townspeople, and that abstract color has no form at all. The townspeople's eyes rolled, but there was no response. They smiled and swung their axes towards Mingli. Wrong, it's watermelon. The floating painting in the air swelled and exploded, and the splashing colors seemed to have substance, suddenly cutting off the upper body of the surrounding townspeople. The clown was able to withstand a piece of debris, and the clothes in contact had been completely corroded, sticking to the flesh and rustling. The fortune teller completely lost his vision and went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to bite his teeth and stuff a cloth strip into his eye socket to stop bleeding. The sudden change was somewhat tricky and caught the attention of the magician presiding over the ceremony. He cast his gaze and was dissatisfied with his subordinates who had not yet completed the sacrifice. Ming Li noticed him and raised his hand to draw a smiling face. "What is this?" He didn't get an answer again and didn't get angry. He smiled and said, "It's your horse, idiot." The magician's expression changed, and it was the first time he had been so insulted. The clown and the fortune teller looked at each other, and the boss spoke up. "You go up, I'm all blind." The clown was helpless and met the expectant gaze of Ming Li. The clown looked at the clown. C6 over there stuffed his prosthetics into the tiger's mouth and exploded it, which was a tragedy. Seeing the animal trainer repeatedly turning back to look at the altar and hearing the sound of explosions, he thought to himself that an opportunity had come. Then he fired a few cold shots and knocked down the bald pigeon that had been harassing him. Sayazi rushed through the remaining monsters' bag clips, casually chopped off their front paws, ate their braids hard a few times, and hugged the trainer. Animal trainers are not vegetarians either. They kick away C6 with one kick, and when C6 succeeds, they immediately retreat. Lighten up the remote control on your hand, boom, mockingly, press the button, and it works in one go. That's tactical integrated explosive miniaturization, more than enough to kill the ghoul in Chu Jing 2. Fireworks bloomed in the alley, briefly illuminating the endless crimson land. Under the bright lights, Ming Li smiled, and her body was covered in deep crimson. Her blood, the blood of her friends, and the blood of her enemies were all stained on her body. "I am here to repay your injustice. Even if you transform into a demon, you are willing to spare no effort. Silent, accept my anger." Chapter 9. Blood for Blood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Actually, implementing the gift from the mask is not an easy task, as everything comes at a cost. I feel like I'm burning, both physically and mentally, as if I'm being roasted. The people in front of her have lost their form, and their expressions towards her are full of fear, just like the people in the famous painting, Scream. They opened their mouths and shouted desperately, praying for the mercy of the gods. But the two respected gods had already died in front of them, mercilessly slaughtered by the clown, who was bathed in blood rain with his hair draped. Half a minute ago, the Joker saw that the animal trainer was facing a lot of misfortune, and with a fierce blow, he directly poured down the potion that he valued as a precious treasure. The blood mist on the surface of the body was steaming, and with the effect of the potion, the clown's body was rising inch by inch, and his muscles rapidly expanded, resembling the appearance of Iki. Unable to fully adapt to this body, the clown rushed towards Ming Li like a shell, vowing to kill this variable quickly. The diviner, whose combat power was greatly damaged, also put on a posture and lined up a row of tarot cards, emitting a strange aura inside, reciting obscure spells in his mouth. Ming Li suddenly felt his body sink, struggling against the inexplicable pressure, and his comical smile was approaching. Be obedient and die, otherwise living alone will be very lonely. Relying on the interference of the fortune teller, the clown swung a heavy fist. Unexpectedly, as his fist approached, he suddenly saw strange ripples on the entire body of his opponent in front of him. Like the wind brushing over the water, but it's even heavier. That's a sticky oil paint. The alarm sounded in his heart, and the wind behind him sounded. The clown, who had no time to think, had to hastily attack back again. Unfortunately, you guessed wrong again, Joker. The real protagonist fell from mid-air, and the glass at her fingertips refracted a crimson halo. She melted the glass and unknown paint with her bare hands to create a brand new long sword. A flash of blood. Beheading. From the beginning, they had no chance of defeating Ming Li, because she could do more than that. Exaggerated muscles are cut open like butter, and fragile life is not worth mentioning, just like every dead person lying in a pool of blood. The fortune teller and his disciples worked tirelessly to prop up a earthen wall. He no longer cared about any rituals, otherwise it would be him who was brought to the altar picking up the body that was constantly shrinking back to its normal size like a leek. Ming Li put on a bowling posture and said, "Let's go," bang. The body was smashed onto it, and the earthen walls stood still. The fortune teller was overjoyed and quickly commanded the townspeople to come forward and obstruct Ming Li, shaking them. "Kenneth, help me." The magician, who was called by his real name, turned pale and said, "Of course, I will save you." Ming Li, who had originally avoided killing the townspeople, is now in a passive position. Her education is not enough to make her take killing civilians for granted. At this point, the enthusiastic mask came in handy. Anna, these guys have long lost their qualification as human beings. At best, they can only be considered as blood food prepared for the gods, and they can't even provide anchor points for faith. Anyway, you don't understand. Besides, these scumbags are closely related to your friends' deaths. You're not going to let them go, are you? This statement successfully shattered Ming Li's moral standards. Since you are no longer human, let me clean you all up. Killing these numb townspeople is like chopping melons and vegetables. The splashing blood makes the red mist even more solidified, but it is not just the townspeople who are driven even crazier. Slaughtering, hundreds of crazy townspeople launched an attack on Ming Li alone, but the fortune teller clearly felt that she was the one who launched a hunt for everyone. He couldn't help but collapse and shout, "Hurry up. She's coming over." The next second, the tightly packed crowd was cut off by the waist in unison, and blood passed through the crumbling earthen wall and hit the fortune teller's eye. The imminent death not only made him howl incessantly, but even the numb and painless townspeople crawled on the ground, trying to get further away from him. Wiping a handful of blood from his face, Ming Li crossed over the pagan disciples who had just laughed wildly but now howling and crying, and headed straight towards the fortune teller. Suddenly, the flesh whiskers rising from the edge of the altar repelled Ming Li's attack, rolling up the fortune teller and returning to the magician's side. But they didn't put him down, but raised him high, as if playing with the meat on the chopping board. Before I had time to feel fortunate enough to escape death, the fortune teller understood. "What do you want to do? Kenneth? Have you forgotten your agreement with me? Without me, you wouldn't be able to hold a summoning ceremony for the Lord." No, let me go. Please. You can't do this. Ah. The tentacles entwined and burrowed into the body of the fortune teller, squeezing his thin skin and swelling high, causing him to scream in pain and die. There are exactly two missing positions. You two useless people who can't get things done, let's offer everything insignificant to our Lord. The magician smiled with satisfaction. To him, this circus was just a tool to achieve its goals, including these people, who were just consumables. With the sound of bubbles bursting, the fortune teller was completely squeezed out, and the body of the clown not far away was also wrapped and taken away. Ming Li swung out her blade, easily cutting off her spine, but at this moment it could not harm those clearly activated tentacles at all. She could only give up the idea of snatching the body of the clown to destroy the sacrifice. As more and more tentacles crawled out of the ground, Ming Li could only control his clone to evacuate the bodies of the only surviving Martin and his deceased friends to a safe zone. C6, who was hiding behind the wall, was struggling to wrap a bandage, and now he could only hang his own life. Watching the sudden appearance of the Joker, C6 beside him, he immediately raised his pistol and the other person took a step first, quickly removing his magazine. Ming Li gently put down Maggie and said, "Can you help me take care of them?" "Soon, I'll take care of them and come back." C6 swallowed his saliva and said, "Of course, my honor." He had never seen Ming Li before. At first glance, he thought she was the clown under her tattered clothes, but her aura was far more terrifying and mysterious than hers. This woman is even stronger than the captain. Martin grabbed Ming Li's blood-stained T-shirt and said, "Big sister, you must come back." Ming Li touched his head but did not answer. C6 saw that she was going to confront the heretic bishop who had already fully begun the ceremony, and quickly spoke up to dissuade, "I think it's better for you to stay here. You can't defeat these crazy people. I have already asked for help, and when we wait, someone will come to save us." C6 remained silent, and Mingli glanced at him. The madness and bloodthirsty in her eyes were on the verge of losing control. She was afraid that when these inactive people arrived, she would let go of the sinners. She couldn't make a promise to Martin, but even if it was death, she wanted that person to pay for it with blood. When he reappeared in the magician's sight, Mingli lit a cigarette. "That's from Lida." He was just about to confess his love for the girl in the police force and even said he wanted to quit smoking. Now she smokes for this cigarette gun. The magician was a bit puzzled. "Did you not escape just now? Or did you think you could kill me? The entire town is under his control, and this is his domain, where he is the authority of the demigod. Unless a true spokesperson arrives here, everything will be irrelevant as long as he drags on until the arrival of the Scarlet Spring." Through the thin red mist, the cigarette butts flickered bright and dark, and Mingli exhaled the last cigarette ring. Ignoring the hypocritical guy on his face, he turned his gaze to the vast cocoon that gradually grew and stretched behind him. The red thread radiated from the center of that thing, plundering all the vitality around it. His pitiful believers had been eaten clean. Well, she's also worried that the magician will replace the damage with his followers, and there will be fewer obstacles and miscellaneous matters, so. Here we go. Raising his hand, he threw out the sculpted object in his hand, and in an instant, the mist piercing through his eyes pierced straight into his eyeballs. Unfortunately, the tentacles around the body reacted early and smashed the hidden weapon. What Mingli needs is the visual masking of this minute and second, and the sound of the explosion is close. A whip leg was perfectly pulled out, sweeping away all the tentacles, and the magician's smile became even brighter. "The food delivered to your door, if you don't eat it, you'll be at a loss." The tentacles hidden behind were ejected, instantly piercing through the ants in front of them who were beyond their measure. "Wait!" Bang! The timely defense saved the magician's life. What was in front of me was indeed a clone, the slippery oil paint being stirred up and scattered on the ground, accumulating into a small puddle. Behind him was another Mingli holding a makeshift weapon that pierced through the obstructing tentacles. Seeing the surprise attack fail, he playfully waved his hand and said, "Long time no see." At this critical moment, how could one turn to the threat of using unknown means? Dozens of tentacles gathered together, throwing Mingli onto a platform far away from the cocoon. In the center of the platform is the remains of a worn-out fortune teller. Watching the other person die in agony, Mingli expressed a 3-second silence for him, otherwise he could have died even worse. With a mindset of rational resource utilization, Mingli pulled out the spine of the fortune teller and made a simple processing that became a handy weapon. A person who is not short of money but knows how to split a penny into two will not dislike this old man's scoliosis. Watching Mingli's every move, and recalling her unchanged slaughter, the magician couldn't distinguish for a moment who was more cruel. The second round began, and at this moment, Mingli was already numb to her physical feelings. The only thing that supported her to stand up was the belief in revenge. But Mingli doesn't think he will lose to the other party. After all, the other party is just an ordinary person. As early as receiving the mask, Mingli could already feel the subtle and wonderful components hidden in the space under the perception of ordinary people. After being baptized with accompanying knowledge, she understood the existence of magic element. It is these so-called magic elements that enable her various means to be realized, which is also the basis for the vast majority of abnormal phenomena. Anyway, Mingli can perceive and observe the amount of magic element aggregation on others, and when it is below a certain level and cannot be controlled, it can be basically confirmed that the observed person is an ordinary person. And the magician in front of me is just the ordinary person mentioned above. But his power as a bishop allows him to borrow the power of unknown existence, which is far more crushing than the pressure of death. Without a doubt, he has hidden his cards. At present, they have only demonstrated two abilities. One is to use the body of the believer to exchange damage, and the other is to manipulate the tentacles for their own use. Ming Li's brain was running rapidly, and he came to the conclusion that it was faster than him, so fast that he didn't have time to react and show his cards, and there was a chance to cross the tentacles and kill him. However, after this encounter, the magician also changed his strategy, with more tentacles spawning and hovering around him, tightly sealed. He remembered clearly that Ming Li had two clones, and now one of them has been completely destroyed, and there is still one. The information gap is often the fundamental factor in turning defeat into victory. When it comes to finding a match, one should be more cautious and cautious. Watching the gradually formed body inside the cocoon and the gradually solidified pressure, Ming Li knew he couldn't wait anymore unless there was really reinforcements. The divergent perception was slightly touched, and Ming Li and the magician looked up together, the crimson sky trembling. The invisible barrier is being destroyed by external forces. For magicians, they come early, for Ming Li, it's just right. This time it was the magician's first move, and he still showed his trump card first. Under the surging red mist, rugged thorny roses bloomed brilliantly, with eerie smiling faces and heads within their stamens. Those are the dead townspeople, with her friends passing by in a flash. That's Maggie. Out of anger, Ming Li no longer hid and summoned the clones hidden in the shadows, covering each other as they approached the magician at high speed. Hold on, just hold on for another 10 minutes, no. Even if it's only 3 minutes, it's enough. Bang! A powerful shock struck again, as someone outside the barrier gently knocked open this fragile door. The magician, who was struggling to support himself, lacked skills and could only rely on a cane to try his best to share the pressure. However, the white hair and dripping sweat in his temples told Ming Li that this ordinary person would still find it difficult to compete with true transcendence. The magician also knows his weakness. Without the protection of the Scarlet Spring, he is vulnerable to a single blow. All he has is some tricks, a little bit of tenacity, and the promise that supports him to come here. Looking back, the body immersed in amniotic fluid had become more complete, and it was indeed the figure in his memory. In this way, we can also fulfill our wishes. The magician who relied on his support to survive to the present day has long lost his former vigor and vitality, and the remaining vitality has also been lost in the manipulation of tentacles and techniques. He may not be able to hold on until the ceremony is completed. In order to ensure the completion of the ceremony, the magician completely opened his arms to him, and from the beginning, all the defenses set against him were lifted. Embrace new life, even if the ending is death. This is a self-nourishment. Accompanied by multiple tentacles entering the magician's body, his only self-protective spiritual power flowed into the cocoon, accompanied by his memories and longing. It's too late. C6 hugged Martin and prepared for the possible spiritual and magical impact that followed. Ming Li consumed the clone in exchange for the opportunity to escape, and directly took the face of the magician who had not yet been completely engulfed by the cocoon. The cold light is approaching, fleeting. But this desperate blow was ultimately caught by one hand with bare hands. Who is that? A delicate newborn arm wrapped around the magician's neck, catching the fatal blow effortlessly. After breaking free from the shackles of the magic element, Ming Li stirred up a local storm around the molded weapon that was capable of cutting through the alloy. However, under the absolute control of the opponent, it was completely eliminated, and even farting would be louder than this. Run quickly. Humans. The mask, which had just been watching the play with great interest, sounded out to remind her. Bang! Death brushes away the wandering thoughts. When she regained her senses, her entire left arm holding the weapon had been cut off, followed by an unparalleled storm. The red mist carried the air, and the magic element rebelled to form a vortex, blowing away the heavily damaged Ming Li like a bug. All of this is just an instant, but the power contained inside is absolutely superior to everyone present, and that thing just lightly moved its fingers. After losing the leverage point, Mingli fell from mid-air and landed heavily on the high platform. Haha! The extreme pain and pressure oppressed Mingli's nerves, and a chaotic sense of powerlessness swept through her whole body. She could only fall to the ground, the blood in her mouth running uncontrollably out, and the injury to her broken arm seemed insignificant at this moment. The bones of the whole body seemed to be shattered by that blow, and even half of the mask cracked open. Mingli's face was exposed to the air, and at this moment, there was no means to isolate the red mist. She was also stimulated to burst into laughter. Crawling on the ground, a pair of feet fell in front of Mingli's eyes, white and not like an ordinary person. Looking up, my eyes were on the verge of rupture. But she still widened her eyes and looked at the god born from the cocoon. Mingli saw a not very beautiful face, which was a woman in her 20s. But the solemn aura emanating from her body reminded Mingli that this was he, not she. He hugged the undead magician and sat down not far from Ming, as if to better embrace the old man in his arms who had taken off his young appearance. The magician, should have called him Kenneth, and now he smiled contentedly. The withered palm trembled as he stroked the delicate face of the woman, and he cooperated by gripping his hand, allowing him to fully touch the person he had been thinking about day and night. Aging and youth form a sharp contrast, just like the huge gap they have always been apart, poverty and wealth, life and death. But now they are still reuniting here, even if they are about to part ways again. This side alone is enough to mock death. Mingli also understood it clearly. She didn't believe that there would really be any deity willing to let a tiny human soul reside in her container. So she took a breath and began to mock, no way. Cough, cough, cough. You wouldn't really think that the Lord of Spring would be so kind, would you? Are you sure this is your lover? Ha ha ha. Kenneth paused for a moment, then extended his hand again and made the gesture he had agreed with her. The woman lowered her eyes. Amidst Kenneth's desperate laughter, the woman made another gesture. The two gestures collided, creating a pair of swans together. It's you. It's really you. Mariana, I did it. I can finally be with you again. Kenneth wept with joy, he was so happy. The woman's eyes were completely clear, and she smiled and kissed Kenneth's forehead. The red halo spread, and she saw that she had saved Kenneth from dying. Mingli couldn't laugh anymore, but she still had her last card. Although it was meaningless, she would definitely not let this pair of unfortunate mandarin ducks have a better time. In order to kill countless people for one person and create such a situation, do we still hope to have lovers who will eventually get married? Dream of Nima. The controller that bit her teeth was not completely useless with the earlier blow. She successfully left a miniature bomb provided by C6 on Kenneth's collar. Although it was impossible to end the blood sacrifice by killing Kenneth, it still faithfully fulfilled its mission. Boo-hoo. The small explosion once again separated Kenneth and his lover. A woman named Mariana has returned from a long slumber, and she only wants to be with her lover well. They may form their families again in this era, or they may have their children again, and they should not be separated. But her lover died in her own arms, and the area above his neck was bombed to a pulp. Her brain even splashed into her mouth, smelling foul and disgusting. Ah! Ah 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 ah. Mariana couldn't believe it. She continued to use her senses to stimulate the strange power to repair her lover's head, but the headless body remained silent. He died, in front of her. Mingli succeeded and couldn't help but burst out laughing again. The smile won't disappear, but it will shift. I've said it before, you must pay the price for your actions, repay us with your blood, don't lose, Stimulated, Mariana ultimately couldn't rely on Kenneth's spiritual power to maintain her consciousness. She lay on the headless corpse and wept bitterly. The invisible framework collapses, and only true gods can be considered to be present here. The last clone rushed out, carrying Mingli to flee this place in a hurry. Unfortunately, her spirit was already nearing exhaustion, and she couldn't maintain her shape much longer before running far, turning into oil paint and falling to the ground. Even if I put in a lot of effort to hide my clone, use bombs, and fight my life, I still can't stop that thing from coming. I have done my best. The last culprit has just appeared, but you can't do it anymore. You're still too young. As her consciousness drifted away, Mingli heard the sound of the mask again, and she also saw C6 running towards her, as well as Martin shouting anxiously. The newly awakened Crimson Spring awakens the dormant flowers, countless flesh and blood roses sprouting from the ground, ready to pierce through the hanging breath of Meili. Bang! The sky cracked open, and a dim yellow morning light scattered from it. The bloody dark night has passed, and the false starry sky will eventually be a bubble. This time, I still won. Until the reinforcements arrived, Mingli fell into a deep sleep. It's dawn. Chapter 10. Separation. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Do you know how long it takes for a small town with a permanent population of over 3,000 to be erased from the map? The answer is 45 hours. In less than 2 days, there is enough time to do many things, such as spending more than 10 minutes to destroy the container of the arrival of the heretic deities who have illegally entered the world, controlling the remaining samples on site, and then carrying out deep pollution removal operations. And, completely erase the traces of the small town called Rau-11an, which is occupied by cultists. Whether it is its existence itself or its past, it has since faded into a small period. People passing by may consider it abandoned and relocated a few years ago, and no one cares about the whereabouts of those who moved out of the town. Regardless of those early believers who believed in heresy, the number of outsiders who died in this infamous disaster is considerable. Hundreds or even more families have been shattered, and no one has survived. What is the solution? People cannot be resurrected after death, and it's better to assume that they all have accidents. Of course, they will weave a series of well-intentioned lies, allowing the cruel truth to be hidden under unexpected disasters. Everything else is fine. Clear the relevant memories of participants and survivors to prevent their mental contamination. These are all fixed processes, day after day, year after year. There are too many accidents in the world, but in order to maintain that fragile security reality, these are all necessary. Even deception is a necessary means. As a member of the task force of the American Freedom Foundation, Emma Smith, who is responsible for residual disinfection and sterilization, always sticks to the front line of her post. She was only willing to hand over the work to the new members of the team after just finishing the last wave of hazard investigation, and take a good rest. After all, I have been working continuously for a day and a night, and my body is really a bit overwhelmed. Emma greeted her colleague wearing a protective suit, but she still wanted to go and see the 3 people who survived the tragic death first. I met C6, who was leaning on a cane at the entrance of the temporary ward, and Emma learned some basic information. Including the highly valued and regulated, spontaneous awakeners, who are still in deep coma. With C6 present, most of the strength and traits exhibited by Mingli after receiving the mask were recorded by his portable recorder. C6 knows that outsiders like Mingli will face great pressure and threats, but this is not something he can influence. Finally, with the support of the Special Task Force, he fought his life to save the almost affected Mingli, and himself was also implicated by the extremely strong soul storm. People woke up this morning, and the recorder and examination were used immediately. He really can't hide it from the above, and besides, he dare not modify these materials. Every awakened one is the perfect candidate to encounter singularity, and their resistance and adaptability are essential conditions for exploring the realm of music. So when encountering a spontaneously awakened person like Mingli, one must give them 12% attention. If possible, it is for their own use. If not, it is absolutely not allowed to be used as a wedding dress for others. Not only are they worried about the competition between other forces and countries, but they are also worried that these awakened beings will become pioneers of different gods and turn against each other. And the child named Martin, after treatment and observation, discovered the possibility of awakening, and was temporarily sent to the Central Welfare Center to be raised due to the death of both parents in this infiltration, finally providing security. Walking to the isolation window, several colleagues from the medical department were busy recording the patient's physical changes, comparing and uploading various data. In fact, this is not a treatment that everyone can receive, but since knowing the identity of this awakened one, the temporary commander has given her the best care. Emma saw herself, a beautiful girl sleeping soundly on the bed, her scattered golden hair reflecting the dawn. Mingli is very beautiful. But she seemed to be having a nightmare, her eyebrows furrowed slightly, and the value on the heart rate monitor was very high. The doctor administered some soothing medication to her, and her breathing slightly calmed down, but there was still a cloud hovering between her eyebrows. Yes, witnessing the deaths of my friends with my own eyes is unbearable for anyone. I'm afraid it was because of this that she unexpectedly woke up. The trauma to her soul, along with mental strain, caused her to fall into a deep sleep, but on the contrary, most of the physical injuries miraculously healed on their own. By the time they arrived, Mingli's blood had stopped, and even her lost left arm had returned to its original state. But after examination, it was found that her left arm was not yet fully developed due to its newly grown internal nerves, and her bones were also very fragile, requiring later protection and treatment. After watching for a while, Emma couldn't help but lean back on the chair and fell asleep. Colleagues also kindly didn't wake her up, let her, this busy person, take a break. No one noticed that a black butterfly landed on the windowsill. When she woke up again, it was already noon. Emma checked the distortion and concentration of magic element here, and only left with peace of mind when she saw that they were both within the normal threshold. The girl's eyebrows didn't furrow anymore. I hope she can have a good dream. The leader of the disinfection and sterilization team who got a rest continued to use landmines, put on protective clothing and started the final work. She passed by a woman from the burning country and ran towards the third block. The black-haired woman from the burning country pushed open the door of the conference room, and Kevin, who was temporarily appointed, was answering another phone call from above. Rubbing his brows, Kevin spoke up and asked, "How are you? Have you seen her?" The tone of the statement was very natural. The guest with the code name, Shadow Butterfly, in front of us is an awakener sent by the headquarters of the Yenghua Security Administration. If it weren't for her, they would have had to wait for the arrival of Rain, Trolloc to open the barrier of Scarlet Spring. Otherwise, with the three demigods descending, they wouldn't have been able to wrestle with that completely alienated deity. If the blood mist spreads, the defense line of the Rocky Mountains in western United States will also be affected. Thanks to her help, the Foundation quickly took control of the situation, so when it was discovered that her level of presence suddenly came here, she could only swallow her anger and cannot argue with Yenghua. It's okay, there's no big problem. Next, I'll take her to the country of inflammation. The gentle breeze blew, lifting a few strands of hair and revealing the tear mole at the corner of her eye. Kevin paused slightly as he lit his cigarette and said, "This is not something I can decide. I have to seek advice from above." Before he could finish speaking, the satellite phone at hand rang again. "Please pick it up." The girl named Shadow Butterfly casually looked into the distance. "The tide of magic has completely come to an end." Yes, I understand." "All right, I'll do it right away." Hanging up the call from across the ocean, Kevin pressed out the cigarette that had been mostly burned for nothing on the table. Silence is the lingering sound of contemplation, and the balance of advantages and disadvantages remains consistent. Kevin has no choice or right to refuse that order. Soon after, a customs clearance order signed with his name, along with a nationality transfer permit, was pushed across the table by him. A pitch-black butterfly landed on the girl's fingertips, turning into a flash of light. Taking the documents, the girl expressed her gratitude and then left. Kevin's eyes were filled with inexplicable sorrow. They knew very little about the intelligence of this Shadow Butterfly, but upon contact, it was evident that her magic element was completely introverted, and she may already be a qualified candidate for the nomination of the 10 Halls of the Flame Kingdom. At present, it is the time for the United States to reorganize its defense against the God of Decay, *****, and the blockade of the deep sea capital. The unnamed, *****, and the exploration of the Stargate has just been put on the agenda. These are all major projects that urgently require human and resource investment. What is despicable is that the right-wing thugs in the opposition who eat dry food have also constrained the military, which has only made this arrival completely unnoticed. If it were not for this, the scheduling of manpower would not be so tight. This incident must have come with internal support. The door is full of dirt. It seems necessary to reorganize the portal. After lighting his last cigarette, Kevin finally made a phone call on his own. Dudu. Hey, it's me, Kevin. The tide has started. We should also start a storm. Outside the window, the virtual canopy is closed, and the container system of the regulatory agency has been collected. During this time, there are huge, unobservable planktonic remains tightly imprisoned between shimmering runes. Its name is Scarlet Spring. The satellite shielding has been lifted. After all departments cleaned up their equipment, the disinfection and sterilization department, wearing pure white protective clothing, completely killed the traces of hundreds of people from this land. This matter comes to an end here. The archives will record it as Red Morning and archive it. The eerie red color of the southern section of the Rocky Mountains has faded, and the lush forests that were supposed to regain their emerald green vitality have shown temporary withering in recent days. The forest mourns, and the mountains guide the direction of the soul homeland for the deceased. A week later, Ming Li attended their funeral wearing a black suit. Because the scope of the impact this time is too broad, and the few people from Ming Li are traveling together, it is impossible to fabricate their deaths as unrelated accidents. So the final result is a case involving a huge overseas criminal group, and they are victims of accidental involvement. Night Butterfly watched in the dark as she presented a bouquet of morning flowers to her long-time friend as a stranger. This is a collective mourning. Lyda, Lyair, Alina, Luca and Lisa, Maggie, and Melanda. That is, she herself. Their bonds are deep, and even as early as elementary school, ignorant, they have become friends. Time flies quickly, and it should be over 10 years. Lyda's crush, the police officer, cried bitterly, and Luca and Lisa were getting engaged early on. They were already family, but their family lost them. Many people they know here, including family members, mentors, classmates, colleagues, convenience store owners, and even scavengers who have been helped by them. Too many memories. When Yiling flew around the world, only these people who lived here accompanied her. Her childhood and youth have all come to an end here. There is a butterfly resting on Ming Li's shoulder, whose function is to change the user's image in the eyes of people around him, in order to achieve a camouflage effect. Now, in the eyes of others, she is a man of Chinese descent with one hand in plaster, whom she has never met before. Ming Li put down the white rose in her hand, and in front of her was a cold tombstone with their photos pasted on it. Fresh lives are as pale as this. Even if they leave many memories in the world, they can only sleep in the mud in the end. Bowing, she placed the gift box in her arms on the ground. Then he turned around and left, like many strangers who came to mourn. She saw their family, and their eyes were filled with uncontrollable tears and pain. The old lady of the Lair family has always been so spirited and capable, but after losing her 2 sons, she also leaned haggardly in her husband's arms. She also saw Joel, the young master who changed his previous coquettishness and put on the most appropriate black suit. He solemnly presented a white rose in front of the Ming Li tomb. "Now, you're not allergic, are you?" she heard Joel say. Ming Li couldn't bear to watch anymore, and she didn't dare to approach these familiar people. She was already dead. From the moment she deeply touched or even entered the inner world, she was destined to have no connection with ordinary and stable. To stay away from them is to protect them, and she is afraid that if she gets too close, she will cry. Maggie's sister saw the gift box and recognized what was inside. The limited luxury watch was a birthday gift given by Maggie and his team to Mingli, with their names engraved on it. She also knew that Maggie secretly carved a love between her name and Mingli. But Mingli will never know what Maggie wants to say anymore. She left the cemetery and returned to her residence. This is her and Yi Ling's home, their warm haven. She sat on the sunny hanging chair, swinging and playing as usual, but her sharp senses made her lose her previous feelings. Ringing bell. It's not the phone Night Butterfly gave her, it's the old landline phone at home ringing. Hello, may I ask if you are? Li, I'm here. Let's cry. Upon hearing the familiar voice, tears finally burst through my throat. Mingli curled up in a chair, crying uncontrollably, while on the other end of the phone, Yi Ling listened to her pain. With her around, there's no need to pretend to be as strong as usual, as occasional fragility can be warmly embraced. Zhaoshuyuan.com. Yi Ling said, come to Yanguo. I can't go back there now. If I leave, I can't stay there anymore. After we meet again, I'll tell you everything. I'll wait for you. The phone hung up, and Mingli once again hit her vulnerability. Let's go, miss. Now I can only rely on you. Mingli smiled and looked at the beauty who had passed by with her on the street, now regained. Unfortunately, those guys don't have this eye candy anymore. Yi Dai didn't seem to see Ming Li's red nose, just focused on her eyes. For a long time, it was so long that Mei Li's thick-skinned face couldn't hold on any longer, before he said, okay, let's go. The dim yellow light reflects the red glow in the sky, and the warm orange paints the outer shell of the plane with the sunset. On the special plane of Yanguo Post, there were only 2 passengers in the spacious cabin, except for some fixed cargo. The blonde girl among them had already fallen asleep wearily, her head getting more and more crooked, and finally landed on the bright white shoulders wrapped in black. Yi Dai didn't push her away, she didn't dislike the contact of Mingli. The captain, who was watching through the surveillance, was amazed and only converged when he saw the other person's eyes staring straight at the camera. Ladies, this flight is handled by Yanguo Post, and our destination is Yanguo. In her dream, Mingli saw those old friends waving goodbye to her. You're really lucky now, take good care of yourself. Don't forget us. Well, I will. You too, have a good journey. The ordinary person named Miranda has passed away, leaving behind the awakened one named Mingli. Returning, why bother going without me? Originally, the ambition of ignorance.